Welcome everybody to this very special event to complete the triangle of the matches between Oppaways and Jasugi and JannLee. This time I'll be taking Jasugi's perspective, so following Jasugi, and we're going to see a very long match. The players are aiming to complete 110 games in the one session, so I'm expecting the match to take between 3 and 4 hours, about 3.5. So starting at 11 p.m. Sydney time. The first match is yet to get underway and could be going anything until about 3 in the morning. So I'm prepared for a long one. I hope you can stick with me, whatever time it is at your end. So I guess it'll be about around midday in Europe and something like 7 in the morning, or actually could be earlier. Could be actually. I think Jasugi's it's 4 a.m. for him. Vancouver, I hear. I guess that must be in the West Coast. I haven't actually been to Canada or the US, unless you count Hawaii. Yeah, Hawaii is part of the US, but obviously not in the mainland. It's pretty close to Australian time. There's not that many hours difference between here and Hawaii. And pretty quick flight too, 9 hours. Got to meet some chess players on the main island of Oahu. So we're just waiting for the first match to start. Any predictions? Tell me in the chat. I was actually going to go for JannLee. I switched my mind just at the last moment because watching Jasugi all week, he's just absolutely gone ballistic. He's totally on fire. Like he played a match with Master 10 last night. I think he won 10 in a row. Adopted Master 10, and Master 10 made the 8-player candidates. So yeah, Jasugi is in such good form, and of course, humble as he is, he's saying JannLee is the favorite, and JannLee would probably say Jasugi is the favorite. So I don't know. Tell me what you think, guys. But I would say Jasugi wins 50. Hang on, 110 games, 55. No, he's going to win 59 games to 51. That's my prediction. Jasugi to win 59-51. Ryusei in the chat saying Jasugi wins 65-45. That's a pretty big margin. But the time may be a factor. I mean, Jasugi does have some long Bughouse series with Helm's Knight and Chicken going till 7 in the morning, but I think fatigue and stamina is going to be a big factor in this match. So starting at 4 a.m., it's not the ideal time I would even wake up. My ideal time is more like 8 a.m. to wake up, but during the weekday, it's more like I'm forced to wake up at 6 most mornings. But 4 a.m. is something else. Here we go. E4, E5, knight C3, knight bishop C4. We have a main line, castle, castle. Jasugi's not going for his funny anti-theory. Knight G5. I saw him play that a couple of times against Master 10. Bishop G4. He would just sack the queen. Bishop at H5. Take back immediately without dropping pawn at F7. Gives white more options. Knight D4. Probably still in prep. I think Knight D4 is the move, and Queen H4 is actually very dangerous. So white has to be careful because there's pressure on F2, also pressure on H2. So rook at H3, blocking out any attacks on the H file. But now what's happening? Knight at G3, so the queen can't be taken there. King's safe on H8 as long as JannLee has something after bishop takes E2. So what happens on bishop takes E2? Doesn't seem to be any forcing signal. He's got to watch out for knight at F7. That's why he's going this way to F8. Why are we not watching? Oh, we watched the last couple of matches from JannLee's perspective on my stream, so I thought we'd do a change since Jasugi won the match against Oppa. So idea is to make a weakness on G2, but this does come with check. Defending G2 is Jasugi's going to defend by taking here. Probably bishop at G1, bishop at F1. And that's it, there's rook at H1. So king F8, a key move there from JannLee. JannLee takes the first game with black. And the idea was not to be stuck in the corner where bishop takes E2. There was a threat of knight at F7, forcing black to defend. So very interesting theoretically as well as practically speaking, the first game, win to black. And I wonder how many games we are going to see black win in this match. Probably quite a lot. And if it is going to be a big margin one way or the other, there's obviously going to be a lot of black wins. So Just let me step back without changing the board. E4, D5. Jasugi's gone for his typical gambit with D5 and C6. He's managed to castle safely without allowing pawn at H6, but JannLee's going for the light square attack on E6 and F7. Once the bishop comes to G4, this helps to cover the squares around White's king, so White's king very safe. Maybe just picking back some material. He wants to put something on E6, I would think, but no, he's allowing a trade here. That's not a trade, that's just forcing White to defend. Don't see any obvious way in for Jasugi. I mean, he's going to put something on H3 eventually, but there's a couple of pieces defending for the moment. He just wants to play pawn on E2 next. And this knight on G5 kind of gets in the way. I mean, it does help support the light square attack with E6 and F7, but because the king is on a dark square, hang on. Oh, there's a trick. JannLee has swindled the swindler. The great swindler himself, Jasugi, has been swindled. He's been upset in game 2. That is a big ouch. So, the start of the match. Maybe it surprises everyone, but we see the same opening again. Queen takes G4, bishop at H5, bishop takes G4. Is that a switch up with bishop at G6? Yeah, 110 games. This task going to be tough. It's going to be rough for Jasugi missing these mates. I thought Black was doing totally fine until he fell for this queen takes H7 trick. Just eliminating the defender of G6 last game. Now, this queen H4 move, Black really is setting up for some sort of a sack on either F2 or H2, but you can see the bishop covers G4, so there's no knight drops on G4 after any potential sack. He's going to have to give the queen though at some point. So one idea of bishop at G6 is to make it harder to attack with knight coming to F7. So White is pulling back. So White would really like either a knight or what else? Maybe pawn at F5 is typical, pawn H5 eventually. Now he's got the knight. So the rook and bishop are covering F7. This is key. Otherwise, the rook takes G4, but he's got to watch out for knight at F7. So yeah, H5 pushing the bishop. We might see bishop come back. E8, knight at G6, bishop must take. And what is the immediate threat? He doesn't really, his bishop on G4 keeps the white king very safe. He doesn't need immediate threat. There's going to be deflecting the knight away from G6. This is going to be a win to Jasugi. Just take the material, and then there's no immediate mate, but there's a rook takes H2 mate, but yeah, too many heavy pieces in the end. He collects the rook and still got heavies in hand. Okay, so the scoreline is 2-1. I'm not going to call the score after each game. You can see it on the screen. Hi guys in the chat. So welcome Barefoot Andrew, and thanks for the follow before somebody. I'll say your name in a second. But let's stick with the action. So we see the similar opening again, pawn at G4. Trying to build some sort of a ladder on the light squares, but that's where JannLee's focused on eliminating that pawn on G4 and then running away. Material, White is up a couple of pawns, but Black has more pieces on the board. Queen D5. Alright, we're going to see some outrageous sack on G2. We are! Bishop takes, so eliminating all the defenders of F3. Big threat now is pawn F3. John thinks he can survive, but I'm highly doubtful. There was some queen H5. Sorry, I missed it. The finisher. I'm just going to check. Let's stick with the action again. Well, if we see a similar line, there's no need to spend too much attention on the opening. We've seen this a couple of times already. So this is game number 5 of a very long series. 110 games. So we see H3, just leaving the knight there. No sack yet. I don't know whether you call it a sack on F7, but 2 pieces for a rook. So maybe Jasugi wants to trade some more pieces before going in for knight takes F7. Might see some counter sack based on the theme of the last game. At some point, I don't think it's a good idea to do it right now because the knight will cover F3. And it's always useful to have two knights in hand before you sack a queen for a pawn like that on g2. Alright, so it looks like Jasugi is the one building an attack faster. And the queen sack doesn't work because eventually there'll be a smothered mate. So we're going to have to see a defense, but the immediate threat is knight hf7 and queen knight hf7 and queen takes h7. So now we're going to see a queen tray. There's no mate. Jasugi's looking for a forced mate here, but I was thinking that to open up the double check, otherwise it's a deflection of the bishop. Queen takes queen coming next. Probably bishop, but he's giving away a lot of material. So white needs a knight to complete the smother on f7. But there's no direct checking sequence. That's why John's defending by taking f6. Crazyhouse is asking why not h takes g6 before. There was a double check and probably queen takes queen to follow. White's gaining a lot of material in that case. Oh, what's this? Gone for a flag, or did black resign? So 3-2 Jasugi. I just log into the Streamlabs so I can see what's going on. Alright, here we see bishop a6. So a switch up. And here's this funny knight b4 move, so trading the bishop for a knight. So in this sort of opening, white has the advantage in material, but black gets to put the pieces on first. And big pressure on g2 f3, pawn at h3. So just trying to take here, and then something's going to take on f3. Take with the bishop. Maybe there'll be a bishop at h1 if the rook takes on g2. So black wants to pick up another pawn desperately, stick it back on g2. Is willing to sack a bishop for it. There we go. So takes the bishop at g2. He's going to take on f3 next. So still nowhere near a mate. The rook is safe on g1. The queen will be safe for the moment on d2. So black is going to need a knight or a rook to build any decisive attack. He has to defend in the meantime. You would think black has to defend g7. Just pawn at h6. The queen's coming in. Not that easy for black to defend. So he's gone for a counter attack on b1. Just knight at, I guess. Knight at d1. No, why give the rook? I don't think that extra pawn did white any favors. There's still no... Okay, so the threat is now knight at h6. Has to be covered by making luft, and that's it. Maybe it was not critical whether white gave the rook or not. But yeah, strong attack with bishop takes f6. Okay, so 3 games all, and yeah, just going to get up the follow to acknowledge the first follower today. It was Pepperdine, that's right. Okay, so thanks for the follow. We have a pawn on h6. How did that get there? We had was it a bishop e7 in the e4, e5 line? Very common from both players with both colors. Probably just pawn at g5, sack the bishop back. He's going to have to defend, not pawn at g7, by putting a pawn on h6. Interesting way to defend. I'm not going to say good or bad till I see what happens. But now there's an obvious hole on h6. So John is just saying, okay, you can drop the knight there, I don't care. It feels to me like black is going to be safe after pawn at g7. White is going for material with pawn at b7. They're just covering with the bishops defending each other. Threat knight takes h2, but it's not a massive threat. So there's a target here on e7. Sacking the bishop to win, sacking the queen for 2 pieces. That's a nice mini combo from JannLee. Bishop at f4 threat, rook takes d2 check. It doesn't look like a decisive threat at the moment, but I don't think black needs anything that immediate, but Jasugi's crashing through very fast with his bishop takes f7. Problem with king h8 is there are going to be some queen sack on h7 and then potentially knight at g6. So black is trying to keep all the pieces defending the king, put the pawns back on to promote. Here we go. Rook, he missed rook at h8, knight and queen. So was king takes surviving? Maybe Jasugi had a little bit too many diagonals, pawn, bishop, and so on. So perhaps black had to play a defensive move there instead of grabbing the rook on a1. And no time to think, of course. Players are mainly going on instinct in the last 10 to 15 seconds of the game. So here we see this queen d5 move again. Maybe pawn at e4, but probably knight c3 is a good response to that. So bishop on is a bit safer for black. And so good move. Looks like the queen doesn't really have anywhere to go. Black doesn't want to trade all the pieces because there's too many holes around the black king. The queen is coming back to a square where it's a bit hard to hunt down the queen. I guess give up the rook, put the bishop back on. And there is a rook 1 takes a7. Rook 1 takes a7. No, he's gone for queen trade because the knight on c3 covers e2. There's no mate here. And if the queen moves, there's also queen takes h5. So we see a queen trade. Rook takes c8, the main threat. Defending here. Maybe queen at b8, I was going to say. Just trade the queens. I guess there's queen at c7. No, black's had enough. It's a bit hard to defend when the rook reaches b8. Okay, so 4 games all. We're now closer to predicting the winner. Not that you'd expect that with only 8 games played, but the players are just trading blows at the moment. So here you see a repetition, and get used to this, guys. We might see quite a few of these today. Now that's interesting. Not bishop at h5, winning the knight back. Rook at g8, probably bishop at, because the bishop doesn't do much once the king is on f8. So white really needs a bishop back on h5, but he's already put it on the board. Opening up the f file, unless there's anything forcing, will advantage white. So that's why JannLee's done a very clever move on to take with check. Knight at e6, and now you can afford to take the queen because you now have bishop e3, which is pawn at f2, I think. Knight at h3, take, rook at, should be safe. Take all the material. So that's why Jasugi hasn't gone for the attack. Bishop at h3, just to avoid any potential knight drops on h3 later. Obvious threats, queen at d7. Maybe just pawn it out, threatening promotion. I wonder if we're going to see... I was thinking queen at g8, but maybe too easy for the knight to defend. So using the pieces on the board, knight d5. Is it a real threat to take here? Jan says no. Bishop at f2 is coming. Actually, the knight covers e3 anyway. So just knight takes, pulling a piece back from the attack, but Jan's got too much already. The rook should be enough to mate, and the extra bishop for e6, and the knight for g8 if he needs it. Jasugi's putting up a fight, but only finding the slowest way to defeat. It's like a mate in 5 instead of a mate in 3. Okay, so very convincing from Jan. And Jan gets another white. Let's see what he can do. And again, it's a bit hard for me to commentate and count the number of black wins. I do find that to be an interesting statistic, though. So if anyone wants to keep count of the black wins in the whole match, I find that quite interesting to keep account of. But I just can't do it right now while I'm focusing on the games. So what do we have here? I mean, white's always going to be a bunch of pawns ahead. It's just a matter of whether he can find a way to put them back on the board. Because he can start dropping pawns with check. And the queen on f1, as you can see, covers everything except a rook. So as long as Jan doesn't give a rook just yet, it should be good for white, you'd think, because white can trade on his terms. Blunderman says, flip the board. But then when Jasugi wins 2 in a row, let's flip the board again. I think it's good to just stick with one player. So pawn at f4. Just trying to take 3 times on e5. Yeah, Jasugi's taking his time because there's no obvious moves for black. So here goes white. You have to attack with white now. You can't really defend against the queen of g1 checkmate threats. So bishop has to be removed before there's any checking sequence. Knight e5. Oh, bishop at e6. Are the pawns enough to mate? I haven't counted, but this is very close. You might need to push f6 once the king is here. I think he's got it. Oh no, push f6 loses the bishop. Pawn at f6. Because then if Jasugi has to trade, then white gets an extra pawn in hand. Maybe there was some bishop move on the board anyway. So it wasn't critical to count the number of pawns. So, 5 games all. Does that change the odds of the match, of the prediction? Not really at this stage. Maybe halfway. We'll start thinking about the winner. I didn't notice JannLee is streaming too. I'm not sure whether he's commentating. It would be a very impressive achievement to commentate and play at this high level at the same time. And at this speed as well. But I'm not watching the stream, but I guess he's not commentating. So pawn at f6, king h7. Where is the attack? Often in these positions you play queen h5, but with the pawns in hand you just stick it back, go for the material. Queen h5 at the moment I don't think really does anything, so trading some more pieces. Allowing a lot with 3 knights in hand. Just sack here without thinking. Knight at d4 is coming to stop king. Actually, you don't need to stop king e2. You need to stop king e3, king d2. But has it just bishop at g4? No, I'm not predicting the moves. How do you stop the king going back to c1? Oh, the blocker theme. You had to block with a queen. That's it. Brilliant. And I think Katask was making the point that players often forget when your opponent doesn't have a suitable piece to block a check. Even strong players often forget that. Because you assume your opponent's got a bunch of pieces, especially bughouse players, because in that sort of position you just ask your partner for a pawn, stick it back on e3, there's no problems. But obviously in Crazyhouse you only have yourself to rely upon. If you only have a queen, you got to use it to block. So the question is black actually winning? What are we going to see? If you go bishop f6, king h7 is safe. Jasugi, oh, he's got knight takes f8. King g8 doesn't work, knight at e7. Oh, this is brilliant from Jasugi. What a comeback. You'd think after he had to block with the king, he was just totally dead, but no. And JannLee's still in the game. Unbelievable. Jasugi flex. There's no mate. This is unbelievable. Did Jasugi miss a mate? No, it wasn't really. I just assumed Jasugi would find a mate there, but yeah, it's an incredible finish. Topsy-turvy game. Okay, so Opweizen saying knight at g6 after king at h8. And that must have cleared some square. Like it cleared the 7th rank or something. Maybe that was important. Maybe that was the point. I don't know. Made in 2. Was it made in 2? Okay. Opening up the c4 diagonal to cover. Yeah, I've kind of lost it already. I'll trust you guys. Queen d4, bishop takes f4. So we see a similar sort of position to 2 games ago, where the queen's safe on f1, defending all the key squares around the king. Probably king h1, not trading. Yeah. Take the knight back, covers everything. There's not even any. So John's going for the material, the promotion. The main threat is knight at f2. Going for the queen, queen at h2, the threat. Yeah, if you could bring this promoted queen somehow back into the game, but maybe take here and pawn at e7. That's about the best I can come up with. You got to find some way to use the promoted queen. Taking pawn at e7, knight at f5. You just keep checking. It's rook at. Oof. Yeah, nice defense. So none of the bishop covers c5. There's no knight at c5. Maybe this is a bit different. The queen covers e7, so pawn it. Yeah, it was way too much material for black. So you don't need a. Yeah, just move the queen. You don't need a convincing finish here for black. Just play solid and safe. Use the time advantage as well. Pick up material. And king's always going to be safe back here. And a very nice game from Jasugi. Just holding off and using some key defensive techniques, picking up the material. Okay, we're going to see knight g5. So avoiding knight g5 this time, just going for a more quiet approach with h3. Knight a5, trading the bishop. Not yet, avoiding knight d5 first. So now trading the bishop, putting it back on h5. I guess he's going to trade here, not bother defending. So it's a good time for a queen safe because it forces the weakness on h5 and h6. Knight at h6 has to be covered, which means black has to give the queen back. And he's doing it by forcing the knight to go to g7, but there's too many squares. You could have covered f7 and g7 at the same time. That's not possible. So it's going to be made in a couple. I mean, the best move is probably something like queen f6, giving up the queen. But yeah, I think this is game over. Yep, he's resigned. So 7-6 Jasugi. Jasugi's switching the move over to a6 first. It does make quite a big difference because, well, this is one reason we can see a more closed position if JannLee chooses to do so. Or we could see a different type of gambit where bishop b5 is not an option. Alright, so this knight on h4 is actually very hard for white to chase away. So it's just going to sit there for a while, and at the right time it's going to sack on g2, but maybe black is trying to trade a few pieces first. Get rid of the knight defending, and then trade a few pieces, then find the right time to sack on g2. I wonder if a rook's going to be useful. Black would really rather the two pawns than the pawn on h3. But it's not really worth sacking everything for a pawn right now when white can so easily defend. Knight takes g2, he's gone all in. So probably king takes g2, then rook takes h5 is the idea, and then knight at... I was thinking, yeah, you could also sack then knight at f4 is even stronger because you're covering h3. The knight's not hanging on f4, which it would be if you play knight at h4 check instead. So knight at g5, has Jasugi got enough? I'd take black every time here, even if you can't calculate all the way to the finish. Because his king was safe, and that was the main thing, even if you couldn't find a force mate. Qatar saying king g2 possible, because bishop at h3 wasn't mate. Oh, I didn't count the pawns. He didn't have any pawns. He had a bishop and a knight, I think. Right, so going back to knight g5 and h3. So you can see Jasugi making subtle move order differences in every game, which is mainly useful if you're just trying to avoid any sort of opponent's preparation for particular lines. So how's Jasugi going to deal with this pawn on e2? What does that do? What's his trick? He's got to have a trick up his sleeve. I don't get it though. I mean, he needs a rook for knight at g6 to work. Can you just take the queen? Oh, there's a knight f8 and pawn at g7. That's his trick. So either g6 needs to be covered or get rid of the bishop defending g6. So now don't take back, but you got to work out if there's a mate threat with knight at g6. Looks like g6 is the square that has to be covered. There is the option of knight at f3, but king h1. Oh, there was a promotion. Actually, knight at f3 could have been strong. I guess he can do it next. So queen takes is answered by knight f3. There's a rook at h2 mate if the king hides in the corner. And this way, there's just rook takes g1 to finish. So yeah, very good timing from JannLee in the counter attack. So just collected enough pieces to make it work. Jasugi still leads by 1. Yeah, good task, since Jan is getting very old. Yes, that's a joke. I've got about 8 years on JannLee, but I could never match JannLee for pace even when I was younger. He was always much faster than me. And I don't think he's having too many problems keeping up with Jasugi. So we see this Jasugi goes for this H5, H4, H3 all in a row. I like to see it all in a row. It's a real caveman style, Ooga Booga style. Bishop F5, pawn F5, knight F3. The more trades he does, it favors black. Just block with bishop. Oh, he's going with a check. Okay. I just had a feeling it was better to block with the bishop and keep the pawn on F3, but I may be wrong. We're going to see king D8. There's no heavy, so the king is safe on C8. Now Jasugi's going to be looking at rook sacs and queen sacs, but that's a nice move. Pawn at G3. So a bit of a hole on F2. Oh, it's so close to a force mate bishop at F2. Knight E4 to come. So close. I still don't see it. And he's given JannLee a rook for E8. I mean, knight C3 almost works, but you still need something more than just a pawn to finish. So he's got rid of the defender of E8. And he's hoping to collect a knight somehow for C3 or F2. Alright, so threat queen takes is covered by the knight. Take, take, take. Only a knight in hand. What's he done? Oh, pre-move. Bad pre-move. What's he done? Given up too many pieces. Knight at C3. Oh, it's an exciting finish. Knight at E5. And what? Huh? Was that mate? Or I don't know. I'm just I've got a 2-second memory, so I'm just gonna move on to the next game. Someone tell me what happened. Was it mate? Bishop at D5 was kind of a failure, I thought. Yeah, because of bishop it was mate. Okay. John had that. Yeah, he just did a bad pre-move, or 2 bad pre-moves in a row. I just dropped too many pieces. Yeah, he definitely had that one. Alright, so is John going to defend some key squares like F7? Is the king going to be safe on E7? John's having a long think. He's defending F7, pulling the knight back. He doesn't want to trade here. He just wants to make sure this square is fortified. Is he going to bother moving the knight? No, he's not. But you can't take with a queen because knight at D7 check. So hard to tell who's winning. My feeling is black is going to run away somehow. I'm just not quite sure how. He's forcing white to defend, put the material on. So it's a nice move. It's attacking and defending every square around the king, just in case he happens to lose a rook or something. Even defends F7 and G8. So we're going to see a big sack on G2. Here we go. Knight F4, or is there a better way to do it? Ah, no immediate sack. Because the king was probably getting away via E3 and D2. Maybe rook takes, yeah, and just take with the D queen, keep this queen here. Keep taking with the other queen, not the G queen. And rook G1, double checkmate. Okay, so we have 8 games to 9. With a whole bunch to go. So this is only the beginning, folks, only the beginning. We see a more defensive approach this time, bishop E2. Queen D4. Alright, so what's happening when the queen is on the E file? Well, there's no immediate threat with the 2 bishops blocking the rook. So just trying to push the queen away with tempo. Not trading knights is a help. Oh yeah, deflecting the bishop. That is nasty. Possibly knight. Knight f2 is maybe too much. Too much to sack. d4. Where's the way in? So black is aiming for a rook. It's a long-term strategy. We just pawn at g3 for now. And well, it's hard to say what white needs. So typical JannLee trying to get rid of the attacker on h3, and Jasugi trying to keep JannLee occupied so he doesn't have time for bishop takes h3. But Jan's plan is quite simple: get rid of all the pawns around the king and replace the pawns to defend. But okay, Jasugi's picking up some serious material here. Doesn't look like there's any counterattack with knight at c5. I don't think this really works. Pull the king back. Ooh, f6. Alright, does he go for it? Does he have to go for it? Or is there a defense? Knight d6, king g6. So excited. So exciting, rather. No more checks. This is going to be too strong. Yeah, so that's it. No blockers. So I think Jasugi just held off enough material for Jan to have a decisive attack in the end. So he found the right route with the king. Carefully treading to avoid the pitfalls. So we see a switch up here from Jasugi, d4, e3. Bishops coming out to g3, no castling, h4. So Jan's pushed g4 and blocking up the h file for as long as he can. So probably going to see knight at f4 next, just to attack the bishop. Very hard to defend. Yeah, pawn on g6, white's happy to trade on h5. And what do you do next? Could switch color and go knight at f5, attack some of the dark squares. Bishop at e3 first. Maybe now time to castle, or yeah, maybe block the sack first. The castling looks totally fine for Jasugi. If he could be bothered, maybe he just couldn't be bothered castling. There's no necessity to castle here. If you got moves to win pieces and keep putting pressure on the opponent's king, no need to castle. So the idea is take on g7, maybe move like bishop at c3, and then find a way to unpin your knight, preferably with tempo if you can. And king f1, very safe king. What does that do? I guess he wants pawn takes, but just leave it there. Go for it. H takes g7. He's trying to do it all with checks, and looks like he's got it. All right, so Jasugi's pulling away just a touch, but yeah, nothing significant at the moment. 11 games to 8. Yeah, someone in the chat, Neverness, saying I'm still skeptical about the 110 games thingy. And yeah, to be honest, I am too. I don't think I've ever actually seen such a long... I mean, maybe Opera and JannLee have played over 100 games in one session in the 8,000 plus games that they played on Lichess, but yeah, you don't see such a long match very often. Yeah, and it is $1 a game, and there was no mention of what happens if one of the players has to postpone the match. Alright, so what do we see? Queen pulling away, and maybe rook at b8. So rook at b8 coming. Where is the blocker on d8? Ooh, deflecting the bishop away from f7. We're going to see some smothered mate theme, perhaps. Or just a brute force attack on e6. So I wonder if knight c5 has any purpose. Or we're doing it with the pawn first. So he's got queen takes and rook at c8 to finish. Very good move order from Jan. Okay, so what do we have here? 9 games to 11. Another e4, e5. So d4 actually worked out quite well for Jasugi. Maybe he'll only pull it out when he feels like it once in a while. Going back to bishop g5. Bishop's gone back to e7. Which normally turns out good for black. I mean, not good, but you know, at least not significantly worse. Just checking the move order. Yeah, there was an early h3, so just in general, if you see bishop g5 and you still haven't played d6, it is a good idea to bring the bishop back to e7. Alright, so he doesn't have a pawn for e2. Where does the queen hide? It's going to be hit no matter what. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. But where's the counter attack? Bishop h3 too slow. So I wonder if you leave it there and play a move like king h8 or covering f7 is useful against any sort of knight at h6 check. Then you could just run to h8. Still don't see any counterattack if king h8, just picking up the bishop, I guess. And he has to calculate a move like bishop at g3 check. See if the counterattack was going anywhere. Well, actually, knight takes bishop covered g3. What's that? Was that a slip, or surely that wasn't meant to happen? I'm not sure what he was intending either. Maybe put something to block the g file, but or maybe in the mad time scramble he thought it was a bishop, picked up a bishop for h6. Alright, so going back to this funny line where the knight comes out to a6, but no bishop at b7 or delayed bishop b7. Okay, a3 or b8, take. And knight at e5. So I think one of the previous games there was no knight c3 and there was a queen d5 played, which I don't think turned out very good for Jasugi. So here, queen is pretty safe on c7, but nice little trick there with picking up the rook, and then there's a bishop f2 check before Jan even thinks about castling. So both sides having attacking ideas, but I think Jasugi is the one putting a little bit more pressure on Jan's king. But Jan does have a material advantage, so as long as Jan can weather the storm and just hold on, then he's just got to work out if h takes g2 comes with a decisive threat. If it does, he can't allow this move, so black has 2 pawns, one here. Does he take it and then run back? But then there's a pawn takes knight check. Hard to work out. Pawn at f2. Is there a piece on the board check? Is there a desperado queen sack to gain a pawn? Otherwise, this is a mate threat rook at e7. Doesn't look like it. Jasugi hasn't found anything, so I assume should be a win to Jan. Knight takes d2 check is about the only check on the board, but no, the king was going to be safe. Okay, Jasugi's gone back to d4, and it feels like when Jan has a good win, it feels like to me, because I'm not really keeping track of the score and after every game, that he's come back into the match and equalized, but still, Jasugi has a small lead, 12-10. Okay, so super solid setup with the pawns. What have we seen? A bishop trade on d3. Yep, a big weakness here on e6 to take advantage of. And you notice how Jasugi didn't grab the pawn on c7 because it does allow an immediate counterattack with knight at h4. Okay, so defending g6 again in case something nasty happens to the queen. Who would you take here? Yeah, I think this trade works out good for white because then black is not sure how to give the piece back. Do you take? Do you run away with the queen? And the pawn on f5 is only going to help white because it's just so hard to get rid of. Yeah, nice defensive and attacking move at the same time. Bishop at h3. Maybe just sack the queen and put the knight back. That's it. So just find a way to block or cover h3. Maybe even put the bishop back, then drop a couple of pawns. He's trying to cover all the squares around the king with the queen. What about knight at h3? And trade queens that way, then rook takes f3. Not predicting the moves, so take, just cover g2. There's no mate threats here, so cover g2. And you could probably allow queen takes queen at h1. King is safe back on. Oh, there's a double check. Hang on, the king is not safe at all. 94 wins. 94 wins. Queen at d2. That was just a mate in 2. 94. Oh, he's done it this way. Okay, I'm not sure what that's 100% force, but I wasn't counting the blockers or anything like that. But I just saw 94 double check. So again, very convincing from Jan with the black pieces, and I thought Jasugi had quite a few chances there. Maybe some missed opportunities. I didn't actually like queen at f3 as a defense, so defending with the strongest piece when your opponent has minor pieces to drop on and harass the queen is usually not a good idea when you can defend better with the minor pieces. So here we have these dancing knights. Knights very strong on f4. And f7 so well covered, there's no counterattack. Looks like, I don't know how black got into this position, but it's... And I haven't counted the pieces, of course, but it looks like black is the one attacking, but the bishop does a great job in defense. So, a bit hard to tell. Neither side has really any decisive advantage in this game. Jan's resorted to 100% passive defense, but with the big wall of pawns, it's going to creep forwards like the game of Horde. Nice move, knight at f5. The rook is going to come in handy eventually when he can get some pawns closer to the 6th and 7th rank. He's just getting rid of the pieces one by one. This is a really impressive game from Jan in 1-0. Very impressive how he's really taken Jasugi apart with defense, starting with defense. And you would even say that's Jan's motto. Yeah, defense before attack, and then you just use the extra pieces to push your opponent off the board. Yeah, that would be one of the highlights of the match so far, I think. Considering after the Jasugi's knight got to f4, I thought he was actually on top. A very impressive fight back from Jan. 12 games all. Jasugi has white again. We see an early trade on f6, 95, knight h5. And it's only a matter of time before Jasugi sacks on g7. Pawn f6 looks very strong for white. Okay, probably leave the knight there and do something. I don't know what. h3? Oh, I guess the move. There we go. Queen takes h5. And the pawn is very useful for both e7 and g7, depending on what happens. So I like the slow approach from Jasugi this game. This is how I would play when I don't see any direct sequences of trades and checks and so on. So just take back here. No. What happens on queen takes h5? So he's avoiding the move queen takes h5, which is quite interesting. I mean, he does have a threat on e5. And now there's a threat on h6 if something drops on g6. Alright, so he's doing everything with a threat. And you notice there's a mate on g7 if there was a trade here. So take the pawn because that means your pawn is more powerful on g6 and h7. Knight at, then what? You still need a pawn. Take the bishop at h7, knight at g. Oh, he doesn't have a knight. He's given it. Ah, now very nice. I didn't see that one coming back with the bishop. And the whole game, black hasn't really had any counter-attack. So it looks like way too much material, too many threats. But still, I mean, it's not over yet. Jasugi, 1 second. It's going to be a flag. Wow. It just looks like after bishop takes c4 that white was just totally dominating. Another incredible defensive performance from JannLee. And the time advantage there really helped the defending side. Because, I mean, white pretty much needed to play perfect move after perfect move to keep the initiative. It was too hard with only a few seconds left on the clock. Okay, so maybe for the first time since the first game or the third game that Jones had the lead in the match. 13-12. So trading on d7, a big threat, but I assume... Oh, he can take on f2 because black has not enough pieces. So he's going for the material back on d7, but probably just knight at e5. No, defending first. Always good to have these bishops on the same color in this sort of open position where even if you lose another bishop, you still have one defending the squares around your king, which is quite important to notice. So just keep dropping those pawns to harass the bishops. Should be a decisive advantage for JannLee. Yeah, and the bishop on e3 helps to cover the king. Even king g1 was totally fine. Yeah, just keep dropping the pawns. Still no immediate mate, but there's no rush. Could even just drop the bishop on somewhere. Pawn at a6, pawn at b7. No, he's taking another approach. So often JannLee, when he has a big time advantage like this, he'll just pull a piece back and defend the king and make sure the opponent has no possible counterplay. Back to d4. Yeah, I didn't notice 5 in a row for JannLee. Half adoption. f6, trade on c6. We're going to see a trade and then... So Jasugi's avoiding moving the f-pawn at this stage. But yeah, I think we saw Jasugi against Oppa have this 4 pawns in a row, or something very similar, some very similar pawn structure where it worked really well with the bishops on the light squares defending the king and the pawns covering all the squares on the 5th rank. So not taking the knight back, Jan's gone all in for the attack, picking up the queen, allowing a move like knight at g6, but counter-attack was too strong, so that's why Jasugi's spending a move to defend. And probably just knight at h3, pick up the rook, pawn at f3, put the bishop back on f3, and where's the finish? No finish yet. Nice move deflecting the pawn, rook at h2 the threat. Okay, he's gone for the sack. You'd think it would be a force mate, but he's still got to find the moves. It's not that obvious. Now what does this do? He wants a knight for somewhere. I haven't worked out where. Big time advantage too, so even if... I mean, look how safe the queen keeps the king on the 7th row if there's no mate. Just keep dropping in with tempo. Rook at g1 the threat. Bishop b2 perhaps. Take. Yeah, nothing immediate, but just wait for a bad pre-move like this and then... Yeah, so once black had the initiative, you saw that Jasugi was just defending the rest of the whole game. So that was the key. Keep up the attack and keep your opponent busy, dropping pieces on in defense. Crazyhouse saying JannLee and his hypnosis. Bamboozling the opponent with unexpected moves. Alright, so what is this? We see a pawn at d6. This time, white's grabbing all the material and hoping to survive after h takes g2 and knight f3. Yeah, so how do you get in here? Pawn at h6? Do you just abandon everything and go all in for the attack? I mean, it's very hard to defend in this position, so you have a couple of tempi because the knight's in the way when it takes the rook on e1, or d4, whatever. There's still no immediate threat, whichever way the knight took. Oh, a smothered mate. And again, Yasugi's missing some mates you wouldn't normally expect him to miss. Bishop h4, knight f6. So to stand opening a different approach this time at g6, bishop g7. Of course, compared to the last game, there's no need for Jan to change anything, but maybe save his best openings for later. And again, we see this rook b8. Now, I think about 4 games ago, there was a winning move with rook takes b2 check. So again, similar sorts of themes, just trying to get rid of the bishop because it helps to support the light squares. King looks pretty safe on h1, this time the white queen's defending. But f takes g3. I guess he wants to answer bishop takes and then put something, a queen on to defend. Again, that queen defending, not so sure. Knight at g3, knight takes rook, rook back on g3. And the black king is looking, 100 times safer than the white king. There we go again, the move rook takes b2. So what's the threat here? I'll just clean up some more material. Put the pawn on. Rook at d2, he'll save for later. Wow, king's coming up in a big chain. It's going to come back eventually. Just like gravity. Yeah, that's too strong for attack. And there was some way to bring the other queen back if the king stepped in a different direction. Alright, so how many games is this? I haven't been counting. Was it 8 in a row for JannLee? Okay, so we're going to have to see some real fighting qualities for Jasugi to come back into the match because, yeah, I mean, it does take a lot of determination and willpower and tenacity when you've just lost 8 in a row. It's a long match. I mean, time is not an issue. It's just a question of changing your mindset and not necessarily changing your whole game strategy, but just trying to focus more on those critical moments and key decisions where maybe not quite defending precisely, and just letting JannLee in the last few games to grab the initiative. And once he gets it, he never lets go. And you think of Jan as a more defensive player than Jasugi, but to force Jasugi on the defensive in the last few games has been a big surprise for me, especially since Jasugi was so aggressive in just about every game in the Oppa match. Alright, we haven't been focusing on this game too much. And it feels like a mate coming up for white, and really? With the rook on f1, it helps to counter any queen sacks. So I don't see anything forcing. And knight at e2, there was nothing. He's just got that triangle of pieces that keeps his king safe. Amazing, huh? And wants to do it all with checks, with queen at h6 coming, and pawn h3. Wow. Oof. Alright, so just having a discussion in the chat about whether JannLee plays the player or plays the game, and Kataska's thinking he plays great quality no matter who the opposition is. But I think, like we were talking about the other day, somehow Jasugi struggles more with Jan, even though Oppa beats Jan and Jan beats... Sorry, Jasugi beats Oppa and Oppa beats Jan, and and it goes around in a triangle. It's a style clash, I guess. I mean, I don't know how to explain it any other way. And somehow Jasugi against Oppo always seems to be pressuring and on the attack, and he always seems to be defending. I mean, okay, not always, not the first 10 games of the match, but we're just in this very difficult phase of the match where Jasugi just has to try to keep things together and not lose a whole bunch more in a row, and just try and pick up the form to the way he started the match. And I do feel like Jan is probably the best at improvising during a long series and adapting his play to his opponent. And if that's what Blunderman was talking about, then I would emphasize that point that Jan is, I think, one of the best or the best player to adapt to the opponent during a long match. Alright, so are we going to see knight takes f3 immediately? And then is there a follow-up? Just putting the pawn out there. Jan's going to hunt it down immediately, as expected. Is it worth a queen sack just to get rid of the pawn and the bishop? I'm sure he's thinking about it. Because to allow bishop takes f4, all we need is a queen deflection. There's a knight e2 check coming. Oh, knight f3 also. Oh, and you can't afford to sack the queen because the queen at g2. Is there a defense? Bishop takes pawn. So it may have been better to sack the queen earlier. Okay, so Jasugi's picked up a lot of material, but with bishop at g2, if Jan wants to defend that way, he's very solid. Pawn at g2. Right, probably Jan is trying to bail out for a draw. Who's actually trying to bail out for a draw? I can't tell who's better. Because it seems like Jan's attacking. It's very similar to the patterns we saw previous game, but this time the bishop helps to cover. Oh, I guess he's working out pawn f6, king f... Oh, he's coming back this way. So hard to tell, it keeps changing all the time. Bishop covers c7, and queen also covers c7. Yeah, black king actually very safe with queen takes. Yeah, look at all those heavies defending the king. So nice defense from Jasugi, amazingly enough, in that game, because you'd think that Jan was doing all the defending. Suddenly it turned around. But yeah, it was good to pick up the knight and run back to c7 from Jasugi. He chose the right way. Alright, so again, early bishop trade on f6. This time knight at g4. Sometimes you go knight h4, but I guess there was no good response to queen g5. I think it works better when black has already made a slight dent, a slight weakness on g6. Alright, okay, wild game. We got attacks in all directions. Discover check, pick up the bishop, but you'd think black is much better. White doesn't have any pieces anywhere near the king. So pin here, thread on g2. If bishop out, you just take with the rook, and that's it. Wow, how did that happen so quickly? 20 games to 13. Alright, so I want to hear from the chat who's predicting a match win for Jasugi now. Because this really does, if you think Jasugi had the edge before the match started, this really evens up the odds. So to see was it actually 10 in a row? Yeah, it was 10 in a row. And now Jasugi's won one and lost one again. So he's going to have to change something, but hard to say in a 1-0 game. I mean, exactly what he needs to change. I mean, you can switch the openings more. We're seeing quite a lot of the same types of openings. But in terms of general play, I mean, I'm not going to tell Jasugi he needs to attack earlier, because I mean, he's really the greatest attacker in the game in both Crazyhouse and Bughouse. So If he's on the defensive straight out of the opening against JannLee, then what can you say? All right, here we go. He's got a chance here, but maybe he has to pull back and defend. There's no forcing mates. The king's going to be safe back on g1. Has to move the queen. So a new angle of attack. Ooh, can he go bishop h6? Ooh. Yeah, I'm lost. Was it actually a forced mate all the way from queen takes f1? It did seem to work, but so I couldn't be 100% sure whether pawn at h6 was the blunder, allowing a mate or. If it was like a forced mate in 6 or mate in 7 or something for Jasugi. Alright, so this time I'm going back to the old bishop defense. And the pawn on g5, you notice, helps to stop the typical theme of knight at f4 and just trying to trade off for all the defenders. The light square defenders of the kingdom. Alright, so he's found a time to grab on c7 where there's no direct counterattack. Knight at h4 is pretty slow. I mean, it's going to sit there for a while, but queen on f2 this time does keep the king very safe. Good move, better than rook at g2 because the knight ends up stuck there on g2. Probably keep the queen there this time and do something else. And now it's time for white to put on one of these feet. What about bishop at f1? He's right about pawn at f3. Alright, so put something onto block. Here I feel like Jasugi's doing the right thing. He's just taking his time defending, using the time advantage, putting the pieces back on the board around the king when he needs to, and choosing the right time to go for the counterattack. Knight at f6. And knight at e8, yeah, he had too many knights. So Mixuchess saying, blocking dilemma, chapter 25. Yeah, I think I did see that very briefly. There's some comment about even strong players often miss when there's either no blockers or you have to block with a valuable piece or just the type of piece that you need to attack or defend, and you have to throw it away blocking a check. Right, so putting the pawn on in defense, pawn at e3, very passive. So this is the sort of position Jasugi absolutely loves. He thrives on this sort of position where he's given up a couple of pawns, but his opponent is going to be very passive for the rest of the game, has no counterattack. So here he goes, launching the f-pawn forwards. Knight very strong with ideas of pawn at h3 or just sacking immediately. Alright, here comes the king all the way out, inviting him to take on g4. That might be a bit too much. So how many piece sacks is this in a row? It just feels like he sacked a lot more than 2 pieces. Alright, I think knight takes f3 is safe. Yeah, there's no counter. You need a heavy kit to counterattack. So bishop at g2, how do you stop it? Do you have to sack the queen and then play rook at g1 or something? Okay, he's trying his best defending the light squares here and picking up the material, but I think in the end Jasugi's always going to have too much pressure. Yeah, f3 was a very useful move in defense though, to help the queen cover the second rank. Someone's asking in the chat, what's the benefit of adoption? Do we really need to answer that question? Alright, I've lost track of the game. I think Probably the players have lost track of what's going on there. There's just checks and crazy stuff happening from both ends, but finally a mate and almost a flag. So would you say, Katas, that Jasugi missed a flag in one? So he played queen at h1, mate, and missed the flag in one. But I'm not very good at finding flags in one. I need some training. Alright, bishop g5. What is the purpose? He wants a second knight. Because... what about a queen second? Knight at f5? Almost works. Well, it actually might have worked. Queen takes it, knight at f5. Yeah, it's too late now once the bishop reaches e6, but still Jasugi has all the long-term attacking chances here. Because the bishop cuts off the king. Actually, the rook cuts off the king now. Did he have to take that back? Where was the defense if he just took on f6 a lot of times and started dropping pieces everywhere with check? Jan would have needed to find some sort of defensive maneuver, but I didn't see it. So Jasugi's taken the safe approach and just picked up some material, keep his king safe. Oh, so he wants knight at e4 with check. But he really does need to stop queen takes g2. You can't allow this, because the king is safe from checks on e8. Yeah, and importantly, when the bishop was on b5 before, there was no such defense with king e8. And king g8, if there was a knight on h5, there was a knight at f6 check also before. A lot of knights Jasugi had in hand. So king f1, take. What is happening here? We see a counter-attack. Actually, this looks mating for black. Wow, and I lost track of how that exactly happened. There was some critical turning point. Jasugi is a dirty positional player. A dirty sack-sitting positional player. Alright, we're going to see some knight takes g2 in this game. We've seen it a few times today. Alright, so swapping the queens. Is Jan going to allow it? Well, how does he avoid? This actually looks disgusting from white. There's so many holes on f2 and g2. Yeah, it does look disgusting position. I don't know how to defend this. Yeah, we just pawn at d6, and what's he aiming at? So defending with king h1, and then... Oh no, so he's not allowing takes on f2, but he is allowing takes on g2 and wants to take back with the queen. That's the defensive idea. Wow, what is this? Oh, there's mate on g2. Very nice. So with two queens in hand, Jasugi sack one and drop the other one on f2. Alright, he's a dirty queen sacker. Was it a pre-move? e6, bishop takes queen. This may be a free point for Jasugi, because as good as Jan is in defending, I don't think he's going to come back in this game at all, I'm predicting. So maybe someone can tell me if they think it wasn't a pre-move, but Jan's only got a pawn and a bishop, which in some positions is enough. I mean, if you have some pressure on the opponent's king or some significantly weak squares to exploit, and also a very safe king yourself, then even a pawn and a minor piece can be worth a queen. Maybe there was some pre-move which I missed from Jasugi. Trying to follow the chat and the game chat as well. So the threat was rook takes and knight takes e6 check. Something at f7, yeah, queen f7. So threats in all directions. Take f6, take the rook. Alright, this has got to be too much. This is resignable, yeah. Alright, what do we have? I haven't kept an eye on the scoreline. But Jasugi has pulled back in the last 6 games. We have an 18-21 in favour of JannLee. Yeah, I was just looking at the move pawn at d3 as the first thing that caught my attention. Interesting that he's not taking it back, just Leaving the double pawn there, forcing John to play d4, waste another move, activating the pieces. Maybe he's going to even allow bishop takes a8 and castle. I thought probably pawn at d6. I'd try and get this move in quickly, pawn at d6, if I was JannLee. Just pawn at g5. What could possibly be wrong with pawn at g5? He's looking at more forcing options. Okay, yeah, with the bishop on f3, you can afford to look at more forcing attacking options. So well, the question is which rook is. He has a choice of 3 rooks to pick up, keeping the pawn on g7, of course. So which one is he going to go for? The pawn at c7? He wants to do it with check. All right. So he's abandoned the idea of pawn at c7 and saying that, yeah, after king h1, there's no attack. Yeah, the rook at h8 is coming next, and bishop takes g7 check, all coming with check. Okay, 22-18 after 40 games. We have 60 games to go to complete the 100 games, and we have a plus GST on top. So in Australia, the GST tax is 10%. So is Lee Chess charging 10% GST to host the match? Or? I wonder how this idea came about of the 110 games. Oh, it was the donation amount from Oppo Wezen and Master 10, who are sponsoring the match. So thanks very much to those guys, Oppo Wezen and Master 10, for contributing. Only a pawn in hand for JannLee. So yeah, assuming something would land at f3 and just pull the queen back. Probably rook back to f1, but then I covered the rook on b1. And now, is John getting in with limited amount of material? f3, the key square. The pawn is creeping closer. And that pawn on e2 might be the deciding factor, because it's actually very hard to defend when your opponent's got a pawn on the second rank. Could he have done it by force with pawn at f2 and knight at e4? Knight at d3, maybe even better, but I think either way was good. Yeah, you could have gone queen at f2 check and then queen takes rook on b2. So black is still winning trades. The more pieces he trades, the better. So it is important that every move comes with some sort of a threat, because otherwise Jasugi's going to put pieces on. Now, if Jasugi had more time, I'd actually favor him in this game right here to win the game. But with 3 seconds, I think it's going to be a flag, king h8. Oh, it's going to be close, 2.6 seconds. But John has a lot of checks. Maybe throw in a queen d7 check. I guess it takes attention away from g8. No, that's it. So, yeah, John is interspersing checks and defensive moves. Just took Jasugi too many moves to make, but amazing effort there. A pleasure to witness. Seeing so many of these games with knight b4. We're preempting bishop at b7 this time. Knight takes d3, knight f4, I guess. Just go for the sack. Nothing better to do with a knight. And give it away. I'm guessing we're going to see the h-pawn punt. Defend c7 first. Well, he might not even bother. Okay, try and make as many attacking moves as you can with a threat. Wow, he's abandoned the rook. Got king f8 as a defense. And I was thinking even knight takes h3 when he had the chance. So if the queen is able to stay on f1, it is safe, but with only diagonal pieces, the king's always going to be safe on f8, which means queen's going to have to find a safe haven, safe place to hide, but it's already made him one. Yeah, I mean the queen on f1 is only going to be safe in the short term with pawn at e2 coming. So who's got the better? I feel like John's got the better of most of these d4, d5 openings. And in the last few games, he's managed to keep this bishop on g7 and keep this fortress for most of the game. And in the previous game with black, well, Jasugi came very close to cracking through on g6 and f7. Right, so typical theme with the knight at e7 check. Just queen takes d5, is it playable? So trying to take the knight for free, but John's found a clever way to defend. Look at those bishops. How do you get in? You can take your pawn at c7, but there's a lot of pieces to trade back for the pawns. So, it's a bit hard to follow exactly. There's pieces flying everywhere. Pieces sacking for pawns. Alright, there's a bit of an opening here on f7. So, just when I thought Jasugi would sack, he doesn't sack and grabs the material. So hard to predict when they're going to sack and when they're not going to sack. But with the knight on d8, it's going to take white a long time to get through this fortress. But I do feel like all Jan's doing is just wasting Jasugi's time, because once he defends, he's going to have the attack on f7 in the long term. Yeah, John's doing a good job. I mean, there's some threats with queen on f2 potentially. Pawn at f2. But I do feel like Jasugi should hold this and then counter-attack should be decisive. Yeah, but it all takes time. I mean, he does have rook at h7 anytime he wants. Pawn takes g6 check. Oh, he missed the mate with queen at f2 and queen takes h2. What happened? I didn't even see. Was it a flag? Win for John. I'm sure Jasugi had that with rook at h7 check and f takes g6 check. He's probably just expecting John to do a sequence of checks all in a row, so he's hovering the mouse around the king. Yeah, I mean, I think Katask is joking about JannLee being an old man. He's got some speed. He's got some skills with the mouse, that's for sure. I'm not sure exactly what the age difference between these two players is. John might have 12 or 13 years on Jasugi. Alright, this looks great for black. Once the pawns get to e4 and f3. I haven't been following the last 5 moves or so, but looks like another one of those funny knight b4 games where the knight comes this way. So it's a nice formation here, knight f5 guards h6. John giving the queen and defending, but yeah, bishop at f3 is going to be too strong. This is resignable. Yep. So another early bishop g5. We've seen the fianchetto again. So that previous game was that mad time scramble at the end where John was putting all the heavy pieces on the first rank and Jasugi was blocking. But I did feel like Jasugi had the advantage the whole way through the game. And I saw there's some interesting statistics that the finisher put up about these two head-to-head over the last 3 or 4 years. And you notice some trends. So John winning most of the games back in 2016 and 17, and the trends starts to move in Jasugi's favor, but in particular this year, Jasugi's won most of the 1+0 games. So going on recent form alone, Jasugi expectedly would have the the favorite position, the pole position. Alright, so the only idea of this move is to hopefully get some knight at f3 one day, but first things first, he has to defend. And of course, Jasugi can win a pawn by just taking here anytime he wants, but I guess he just wants to leave the bishop sitting there for the moment. So as long as the queen covers f3, you need to defend again. Pawn to f3. Hard to find a square for the knight to cover f3. Ooh, scary times. Rook at d2, knight at d3. Bishop. Yes, no, yes, no. Is there a mate? Pawn at f5. Knight takes e5. Pawn at g5. Oh, what a finish. Incredible stuff. So, just so hard to predict even the result of one game. I mean, how can you predict a result over 110 games? Yeah, anything can happen at the end. Right, so avoiding pawn at d3 this time. And finding another way to attack via e4 and f3. So I didn't quite see in the previous game how Jasugi managed to get a pawn on f3 so early. But, I mean, there were potential sacks with the knight on a2 or c2 if he wanted to, if he was really desperate to bring a pawn to f3. But it seems like Jan's in control. He's a few pawns up. He's managed to push most of the black pieces from the direction of the white king. So, king h1, I think black... Sorry, Jan should be okay. Maybe put the queen on in defense. Bishop takes, so this is the piece that has to be deflected. Doing it the queen. Not what I was expecting. Because of course, if you do manage to deflect the bishop, then the queen is needed for this mother mate. Jasugi looking for an idea. Knight at g3 is covered by the bishop. Rook at g1. Knight at e2 covered by the queen, possibly. Ooh. Well, maybe the only defense was king and f1. There was just a sneaky idea I had of rook at g1, knight at e2 if queen takes, then pawn at h2 and queen at g1. But perhaps the king was just getting away via king takes e2. Trying to look at some ideas for Jasugi to use his pieces in hand to attack, but yep, another one of those games that could have gone either way, and it's all a matter of finding moves which defend key squares and attack at the same time. Well, I mean, just so many factors to consider, not just the key squares in defense and attack, but also trying not to sack too many pieces and keep account of the material. And when you do win material, to find the time to put them back on the board, otherwise there's no point winning material in the first place. And also in the opening, you notice Jan trying to trade off some key pieces to keep them away from the white king, so that Jasugi had to sack in order to create something. Right, yeah, I thought we see queen h5 because I don't see any direct mating ideas for JannLee. Alright, there's got to be a forced mate here with... Oh, sorry, I've got this friends list in the way. I thought Jasugi had more pieces in hand. Alright, the bishop doesn't help that much because there's no promotion. Bishops don't promote. So what was happening? No knights. So the knight was really the piece that Jasugi was missing in that game. And I didn't quite see the opening, but I assume it was one of those knight takes f7 ones where black has all the minor pieces. So yeah, JannLee managed to find a defensive formation where the key piece missing was a knight for g6 or f7, and yeah, Jasugi just couldn't do enough with the bishops and the queens and the rook. Right, so again the knight plunges through the middle of the board up to d3, f4, g2. It's taken quite a tour. a6, b4, d3, f4, g2. Counter attack stopping black from castling, just leaving the knight there. And maybe waiting for the right time to take it while black is a bit starved of pieces, so he can drop it back on c7. And even if you take the queen covers squares, bishop here just king g1. And knight at f4, king g1 again, knight h3, king h1, bishop takes, queen takes, so black has to resort to defense. And wow, queen at e5 check doesn't really lead anywhere. Now black has more pieces in hand, but I think he needs either a rook or two knights to do anything. Queen at d8 check. Oh, queen e7, maybe he missed that. Did he have to allow? I mean, he could have blocked before taking with the rook. Would that have survived? Alright, what are we up to? Scoreline. So JannLee again has pulled away a little bit, 4 in a row, 28 to 20. The current scoreline in favour of JannLee. This time, slightly different position where Jasugi has pushed f4 before castling. So, sort of like a reverse Dutch that I'm familiar with. Alright, so interesting redeployment of the bishop back to d1. Maybe just trying to pick off a pawn and trade queens, use this defensive formation again, that's familiar. So I'll probably say it a few times during this match, I feel like JannLee is winning with defense, especially with the black pieces once he gets his fianchetto formation. JannLee is winning by the motto of defense before attack. And it is quite effective against a Dutch sort of formation, this fianchetto, because your pawn structure is on the dark squares and you're facing a bishop on a dark square, and it just takes so many more diagonal pieces to get through. And JannLee had all the play for the whole game. We are up to almost 50 games played. So getting towards the halfway point. And at the moment it's all JannLee. So again, I'll ask the question to the chat. Is anyone brave enough to call a match win for Jasugi? Because I was predicting 59-51 to Jasugi before the match started, but if I had to change my mind now and hedge my bets, I don't think it's going to be a runaway. And I think it'll actually be closer than many people might think. So from now, I would say JannLee 58 to 52. So what's that, a 6-game difference, which means Jasugi will pull back a little bit, but anyway, let's stick with the action. Just living in fantasy land. Alright, so the key defensive idea is to try and slow down pawn at f3, pawn at h3, cracking open the hole on g2. And Jasugi, by dropping a queen here, so highlighting the new target of f2. And at some point he's going to sack the queen, and he can choose which way he's going to sack for the bishop, going for the something dropping, depending where the king goes. E3, is it enough? King E2. Ah, because the black king is safe, yeah, he doesn't need to do it all with check. Yeah, black just has way too much material, and a couple of white's pieces are out of play over here. So a key point in this game is that white hadn't got the time to move the knight from B1, so the first rank was clear. I expect this more from Jasugi. Like we saw it a few times against Oppa. He was doing this desperate sequence of checks at the end and going for the flag if he couldn't win by other means. That was really surprising. Like, who would have predicted with the king so safe that John would even have any idea of coming back into the game? I'm really not used to that. I mean, Jasugi normally outperforms everyone in the time scrambles at the end of the game with 5 seconds left each. So, I don't know. I mean, I think a task is very tricky in the last 5 seconds. But, yeah, people don't normally outplay Jasugi in the last. I mean, on the board as well, not just going for the flag by itself. I mean, putting some serious pressure on the king as well as on the clock. Alright, so we see interesting defensive formations with the knight on e6 and d4. Defending with check. And deciding what he wants to do with the knight in hand. Is he going to sack the queen? He is. Alright, so king e7. Karpovian style defense from JannLee. You see Karpov do something like this in the Caro-Kann in chess when the dark square bishop is off the board. So I'm wondering if we're going to see at some point an attempt at a brute force mate with queen takes d6. So I think Jasugi will be safe when he comes back. Oh, he's got to go for it, but knight's covering d6. Oh, queen h5. Queen f3 maybe even stronger, but he's got this knight at c3. That's it. Knight at c7. Alright, so I think that game was another highlight because you just couldn't tell to the last moment who was winning. d3, I think the finisher will be familiar with this move because I played this against him at least once, maybe twice. It's a pretty solid opening if you can get these knights into play with tempo. The king is safe on h1. Just got to watch out for potential knight at g3. But at the moment the knight has it covered, so blocking the h file is very useful for JannLee. Bethadine's asking how am I holding up. Well, not too bad at the moment. I mean, we're only halfway through the match, not even. But if John can play, then I can stream. I mean, there's no pressure on me. Hey, I can make illegal moves. I can not miss. I can miss mates in one. I can blunder pieces, and it has no consequences. So I'm under no pressure whatsoever to perform. So no heavy. So the queen sack doesn't work because he needs a heavy piece for g1 to complete the smother pattern. So this defense is holding for the moment. It's a nice move to cover g7. Again with the bishop, maybe this time with the rook. I wonder what happens on queen takes f6. Bishop g7, I don't think white has enough pieces. Interesting. Covering g3, that was a mate threat. Still a mate threat on the board. Pawn f2. Oh, what? Switching the color of attack suddenly. So the knight. Oh, here we go. There's some other thing. There we go. That's what I was talking about before. In case you're not familiar with Crazyhouse patterns and you're watching the stream. So typical smother mate theme, also very common in Bughouse. where all you need is a diagonal piece somewhere on the a7, g1 diagonal, and a rook queen, or a knight for f2 to finish. Alright, Mixer's going barracking for Jasugi to come back into the match. Always good if it's an exciting match. So in Australia we often have a theme of backing the underdog, whether we like them or not, doesn't matter. Always good to have an exciting match score-wise, as well as the obvious quality of the matches. So this time we see a little bit more pressure, early pressure on g5, h6. So I like this approach a lot more than the previous game we saw from Jasugi. So bishop at f2, the threat. How to defend? Do you take it? Do you leave it there? Yeah, so bishop covers d3, otherwise knight takes d3 is strong attack. Oh, he's doing it anyway, unexpected. But how to defend? I don't want to predict the next move, I have no idea how to defend this knight at f1. A lot easier for white to attack, I think. Bishop there, bishop e4, takes queen. This is resignable. Yep. Yeah, I mean, way too hard to defend with just the queen in hand. Alright, so one of Jasugi's trademark openings, the old d5, c6. I'm surprised he hasn't gone for a6, d5 more often, because I think that's just as reliable as this opening in terms of the... well, that's if white chooses to accept the sacrifice. Of course, it does give white some more options, but white can always push e5 on move 2 anyway, so if he wants a close position. Maybe Jasugi is happy with the positions he's getting in this sort of position, in this sort of opening, where he does do a real gambit. But there have been a lot of black games where Jasugi has sacked too much, and I think at one point in the stream against Oppa, I said that I don't say very often that Jasugi sacks too much, because he's definitely the most dangerous attacker in the game with few pieces, with limited resources. He's the most dangerous attacking player in the game. But sometimes he just does go a little bit overboard. And I'm not necessarily saying this is one of those times. Maybe before I thought, but he has won some material back through some favorable trades. That's the word I was looking for. Favorable trades, and a nice triple train checkmate. DEF. DEF files covered by the rooks. Alright, early e5. So JannLee switched up the opening. Was it d4 to start? And b6. Alright, so we're going to see a completely different game here because there's no kingside fianchetto. Build up an attack on e4. Maybe trade at the right time. But yeah, it seems like a good idea to get rid of this pawn on d5 first. Now he can take here. Threats of e5. Oof, I think this is an opening disaster for JannLee, actually. An experiment gone wrong. Because this is an overwhelming advantage for Jasugi. Even after the queen take threats of knight takes d5, just probably pawn at f7 and chase the king all around the board. Knight at g5, threat here. Take h7, knight at g6 was an option. There was mate in 3 with knight g6, knight at h7, rook at g8. Assuming you had 2 knights in hand. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I thought there was mate in 3 with knight at g6. Take. He's going to run out of diagonals, perhaps. Ooh, bishop first. Or bring the knight to f6. That might be more likely to lead to mate. Because if he came back this way, there's rook and bishop at g2 to finish. And and rook and pawn takes should be enough. Okay, he's got the other pawn as well attacking. All the lines are opening. I think with rook at h3 to come, this is going to be too much. Yeah, Crazyhouse is saying, why take the rook on a8? Well, I mean, unless I missed something, I thought there was a mate in 3 following. So I don't think that was the fatal mistake, but there was a couple of moves after that. Take knight f6, knight c3, e6. Same again. No need to commentate too much on this position. We've seen it so many times. But a variation with bishop a4. Alright, because often the bishop comes back to either e2 or c4, which are slightly more active. But here, what's it doing? Well, it's always keeping an eye on c6 in case this pawn is undefended. But it forms no attacking formation against the black king, or not doing a lot to defend the white king either. So the whole idea of the opening is eventually to take back on c6, you would assume. Pawn, knight, queen. Okay, what can he do? I don't see a force mate with the king coming out to h4. What does a pawn do? Can you just drop pawns here? Pawn. Bishop takes 9. I guess is a defense. So he wants to take a queen with check. It is an option to take on f6. Yep, he's done it. F takes. Oh, hang on, this queen at g8. Queen at g8, knight at h6. Pawn at g7. Ooh. A queen at g8's got to be made. Pawn at g7 to start also. I think pawn at g7 is a good way to start. And then queen at... No, hang on. Yeah, queen g8. King takes, knight at h6. Oppa's saying it in the chat. Pawn at g7, has to take with the king. He's got options, but yeah, take on f6. Bishop at... He's got to come out, doing it all with check. There's no hiding. So that's your queen at e5 to finish, and pawn at b3, and pawn at a3. Oh, queen c3. Doesn't matter. All right, so John missed the fact that perhaps Jasugi had 2 queens in hand, and he could deflect the king to a square where every move is going to be a check. And that means bishop takes f6 in the previous game. It could be answered by knight takes queen. Sorry. Bishop takes f6, knight takes queen, check. Could he take with the h-pawn? I'm not sure whether there was some other queen drop on h7 or something. Anyway, that's another story. So we are just over halfway through the match, 32-24 to JannLee currently, with 44 games to play, assuming that both the players hold up as well as the streamer. Well, the streamer doesn't matter, the players are all that matters. Alright, so we're going to see some queen second, rook back at g8. I assume so. No, not yet. Queen at d3. Pawn at d2, so he has enough pawns. Queen at d3. Hang on, king's getting out this way. Nice, yeah, using the queen on the board first. Resourcefulness from JannLee, saving the other queen for f4. Okay, bishop c4. This was that game that ended in the queen second, g8. And that was a bishop coming out to a4, which is quite unusual. I think you see a sort of similar position in the 2 knights defense in chess, where there's some options where to move the bishop back after b takes c6. So key square is f3, and the piece Jasugi wants in particular is a pawn. And oh, hang on, yeah, he had to take there first. There was another G7 check. Actually, quite difficult to play the precise attacking moves for white because I feel like it's going to involve threats in both directions, like on f6 and also on c6 and possibly c7, b7. So there could be some bishop. I didn't even see the queen, I just saw knight at c7 check. But yeah, either way, I think white already has too many pieces. Bishop f4. And just take everything with check. Queen at d4 and pawn at g4. No? Oh, hang on, the king was getting away. What am I thinking? Oh yeah, it's easy to miss other people's mates too as a commentator. And it doesn't matter. We had queen at d6. Oh, I've lost count of the pawns. Yeah, didn't quite see the finish. But looked like another very convincing performance. So Oppa's calling for an opening change in the game chat. Might be trying to see something completely different since we're past the halfway point, and obviously now Jasugi needs to change something, and he must realize that. So John is. I was going to say he's. Yeah, I mean I said already. Obviously he's winning with defense first, but in some of these positions you feel like John is really pushing strongly for the attack when he has the opportunity. So it's really a fine balance between a defense and attack. Because you could say the first player to get in first with the attack has the advantage, but it is also a question of material, and I think with the black pieces, with all the sacrifices Jasugi's doing, it's not only a question of activating all your pieces and going in for the attack early. It's more subtle than that. All right, but good chances here with bishop at. I was thinking bishop at f8 to cut the king. I still would have preferred. Ooh, yeah, no attack for black. Bishop on d2 is keeping it safe, and rook at f8 was a mate. Yeah, too many pieces, and a safe white king on h1. All right, so still no opening switch up. Here we go again. This time pawn at a6, allowing the knight to hop away somewhere. I wonder if we're going to see pawn at d3. There we go, pawn at d3 as expected. So interesting castling and not taking back on d3 again. And Jasugi's really playing in the long term, for the long term initiative this time. It's not just directly trying to take advantage of c2 weakness, because his queen will be pushed back if he takes too early. And it's really a limiting formation that he set up here with the rook and the bishop on c1, and a lot of the white pieces are very limited in scope. So black still has very good long-term chances. And it's going to take white an eternity to break through this three bishop defense. So as long as Jasugi can maintain about even on time and keep putting pressure on these squares like e2, then I think Jasugi should take this one. But sometimes when he goes all in for the attack and then trades off his mighty defensive beasts on g6, f6, e6, then at times like these, then you wish he didn't trade off so many pieces. But he's doing his best to hold it. And time may be a factor here because as long as he's holding the g5 square, it doesn't give a knight too easily for f5. Queen d3, yeah, knight at f5. It should be a mate here. Yep, pawn at g4. All right, nice turnaround. I really thought Jasugi had the edge there in the early middle game. So, 60 games played and a 10-game difference, 35 for Jan. All right, super solid formation again. And so in this sort of position, what does Jasugi need to do differently? I wonder if I was his coach, what would I say if we had a mid-break pause for 10 minutes? What would you say? I mean, it's hard to give general advice. It's hard to give specific advice even. Because every game, I mean, there's so many concrete aspects about the game that vary from, even if it looks the same, even if the opening looks the same. I mean, I think here what he's trying to do is attack the base of the pawns on e7. He's lining up his bishops to attack on e7. That's a different sort of strategy. Can't guarantee it's going to work that well. I mean, switching colors from dark squares to light squares, but JannLee seems to be able to predict maybe not every move, but at least the general strategy that Jasugi is employing in the match. Alright, does he have enough here if he takes on g6? Pawn to f5, opening up the g3 diagonal may have been important there. Because if the bishop comes here, king can run this way, back to c7. So I thought pawn f5 was an improvement. And then the other bishop could come to e6, and you got both the diagonals covered. Alright, no immediate counterattack. It's going to be decided on time, you would assume. Check, 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 check. Here we go. Could even take the queen on b4 if it's check, but oh, this is madness. What's happening? I favor JannLee with 2 seconds each. He's got all the checks. Oh, and he's gone for mate. 1.6 seconds, and he's got the mate. Oh, I need a breather after that one. Okay, so we got some theory. Mixer and Katasco will be happy. Pawn at d6. C takes. So C takes, as far as I'm aware, is not the ideal move for black. Either bishop or queen are better if I'm thinking of the right position. Bishop at c5. He's still got to do something about this queen. You'll assume black is going to run out of checks eventually. And the bishop on g4 may help to cover some squares this way. And perhaps he can take this and just go bishop takes d8 and say, alright, what do you got? You need quite an army to get through, like a knight for d7 and a rook for e8. But if there's no knight for d7, then you're not going to get anywhere in attack. So the key square here is f3. g4, f3. And maybe just knight takes g2. And okay, that's a good idea. Knight at d4, the main threat. There's also the e2 square to cover. Ooh, yeah, it's desperation, but there's not enough material. Alright, so coming back to defense. Could have been some move like queen at d3. I guess you don't want to do that move unless you're absolutely sure. Easy for me to say. So, new angle on g2. Take g2. Clean up all the pawns. Yeah, win on time. Alright, flag in 1. Mixu's saying he needs a coffee break. 11 wins lead. Yeah, so just pulled back to 10 as I speak. Alright, so the odds are closing. Well, actually, they're drawing apart, aren't they? The odds. The bigger the lead, it'll be what? 3-1? Who would take Jasugi at 3-1? It might be 4-1 now. Alright, so we haven't seen a position that I recall with an open H-file like this. May have only been one in the match that I recall. I'm not sure that it was so early in the game. So idea trying to poke a big hole on a g6 and f7. Even the option of castling, oh maybe not now. Castling queenside at some point if you get rid of the bishop could be an option. So get rid of the rook, push it all the way back. What next? So many defenders on g6, that's the easiest way in. But there we go, castle queenside. So aiming at some knight takes and bishop takes g6 ideas. Bishop takes, rook takes. And ooh, it is dangerous. So defending with the bishop. Take again. Yep, that's it. You got to collect all the material. Bishop at b2 looks like a threat. Oh, no. Listen to me. Come on. Come on, Jasugi. Listen to me. Bishop at b2 had to be covered. So, I don't know. Bishop on somewhere on this diagonal or pawn at b2 or something. Alright. Yeah, it was actually helpmate. Bishop at b4. Katharaxi is saying in the chat. Jasugi not used to playing in the night. Yeah, and some of us thought that might be quite a significant factor in the match. Jasugi's starting at 4 AM his time, so I don't know whether he had a sleep or a coffee or whether he stayed up the whole night. Alright, so this position at first sight looks good for black because there's so many active pieces. The threat here. Black would really want to pawn for h3. Oh, just take on g5 anytime. Oh, it does open up the rook on the first rank though, if you take on g5. Yeah, so it's an important defensive pattern there. When the bishop recaptures, it stops queen at f1, checkmate. So black here wants to bring the bishop out of the way. And knight e2 check. Otherwise take the rook. I thought you would have gone for the rook and then rook back at e1, pawn at e2. Oh, only a queen blocker. That makes it interesting. Probably going to take that. And again, oh, king e7, yeah. Knight at f5, bishop at... Oh, the other way, okay. Stopping king d7. And again, wow, brilliant finish from JannLee. Yeah, and I'm not predicting Jasugi's moves in attack. I mean, I feel like he has some better options in attack, but I'm certainly... I mean, I find it easier to commentate than play 1-0, of course. I'm not a bullet player at all, but And normally I'm predicting a few more of the moves from Jasugi than is happening right now. And we have a diamond formation. Something out of nothing, says Blunderman in the chat, one of JannLee's favourite expressions. Yeah, if you go back through his videos in the last year or two, then he's probably said that about 200 times. Alright, here I'd take white, because f6, even though it looks like there's lots of pieces guarding, they're going to be removed one by one. And I think the white king is a bit safer here than the black king. So here we go. This is the way Jasugi needs to play. Just choose a color and just a slow build up. Pawns, bishops, keep putting back diagonals. But alright, there's the moment for the counter attack. And one thing I noticed about Oppowezen playing the matches, I mean, he's just so strong at choosing the moment to counter attack when he sees that white needs 2 tempi, and then that's the time to counter attack. So because there's no direct checking sequence that leads to mate, black is choosing exactly the right time to go on the attack. But here, same thing. Now it's white's turn because black doesn't have anything direct. And yeah, 2 seconds at the end, so hard to say whether John missed a mate. It must have been awfully close. But yeah, those are my favorite types of games to commentate on, where you can't tell who's going to win. Like both sides are attacking. They run out of steam in their attack, and then it's the other side's turn. Because they're both testing each other's defensive skills as well as attack. I mean, most players find it a lot harder to defend. JannLee possibly one of the rare exceptions. Okay, so this knight on e3 does keep a lot of the key light squares protected. So there's no typical attack on g2 often in these positions. Knight at d5, just defending f6. So white would really like a pawn for h6, but he's using a knight as a pawn just to try and find a way through. Alright, now pawn at h6 is going to be decisive, so Jasugi's turn to defend. And I think already the pieces are piling up too much for John. King d1, just saving all the material in hand for the attack. We just take there, threat of mate in 2. And we're going to see queen at e8, and queen takes e8 is not a check. That's important, right? King d1. Such an important move because he can sack the queen, put the knight on, finish, and queen takes e8 in response is not a check. Alright, a slight variation in the move order again. So thanks for the follow, Chess on Earth, and also the last samurai. Where are we up to? So just a quick score count. 110 game match if you've just joined. JannLee leading by 12, 39 to 27, with, I'm no good at quick maths, is it 40 something games to go? 43 games to go? Something like that. 43 games to go. And I missed that. That must have been a quick game because it was over in about 20 seconds. But I missed that one. Alright, let's stick with the live action. We have this interesting move, pawn at a6. Idea to keep the bishop protected long enough so he can take here with check, and then so it's a little bit more aggressive. It doesn't look like an aggressive move, pawn at a6. It looks like it's just kind of useless blocking the rook and saving the bishop, which isn't really that well placed to attack the king, but it does turn out to be aggressive when he takes on c6 and d7. Okay, so not a lot you can do with the 4 pawns in hand, so huge advantage here for black, you would think. White just had to drop a wall of pawns on in defense, h3, I suppose. Oh, there is a check over here. So covering e4 first. Nice move, bishop at b5, so forcing another pawn, and now eventually White's going to run out of pawns. Also, I like the way Jasugi is redeploying the bishop to c6 because that way White is completely out of pawns. Wow, look at that long rook left to a5. Trying to make use of the piece which otherwise is just going to sit in the corner like a piece of garbage and be forgotten about forever. So very creative play from both players here. Alright, so where is the way in? Typically here, the bishop would have to be deflected for some knight at f4, knight at h4. It's not quite going to work. Uh-oh. So very strong counterattack from Jan, threatening rook at h8. It's been defended. Knight takes, that's going to be it. Oh no. He didn't have a knight for h5 and there was no follow-up for after rook at h8 check. But yeah, as long as that wall of pawns stayed there, it really should be a win to JannLee here. Well, hang on, did he have to allow this? Maybe he just forgot about defending the key squares again, f4 and h4. Alright, I wasn't expecting that finish. So 2 in a row for Jasugi. The start of a comeback perhaps. And I really thought JannLee was in control of that game. Maybe just lost sight a little bit of the key squares in the last 5 seconds. And again, Jasugi going for this opening of the H file, but JannLee is not allowing it. So, yeah, G Rogers is asking in the game chat 39.29 isn't the total. Yeah, it is the total. We got, I'm just no good at maths. We got 30, is it 32 games to go? Oh, we're talking about something else. Alright, here we see this rook b8 again. And I wonder if, I was just thinking about the idea rook takes b2 and bishop takes c3. Not so sure with the white knight sitting on f5, the start of some attack. Here we go. So knight at h3, if black can pick up this knight here, it actually is a big threat because king h2, knight g4 check. I'm just looking at possible counterattacks for black. Now you can see what he's trying to do, but okay, defending. I mean, it may not have been an instant mate. So rook at g2, still nothing that obvious for black in the form of a counterattack. Yeah, so once his bishop suites here, what next? Doesn't have a pawn yet, so pawn at f3, I guess, is the idea. I was expecting knight at g5, but yeah, black doesn't have a lot of pieces in hand, so it's going to be a win on material for Jasugi this game, which means it should be 3 in a row. Yeah, rook at pawn at h7, knight at g5. Just too much, too strong. Bishop at d8 perhaps first. Yeah, Jasugi is going to have no problems confirming. There's a knight at h4, hang on. Or was it check? Queen takes f5 was not check. Wasn't there some knight at h4 check in response to queen takes f5? Sometimes I think I'm crazy and seeing things, but maybe 1 out of 10 times I see a good move. Alright, h5, knight f4. Here we go again. The ultra caveman attack. Jasugi's got his club ready to do some bashing. I always find it hard to defend against this sort of idea, pawn at f5. Do you just run away with the king and let him take? Do you put a piece on to defend and allow lots of trades? Because often if you take back, your king is drawn out to e6. So, although black is up on material, I think white actually has the edge, although it's not decisive. Maybe bishop back in defense. We're just stopping any knight at g4 ideas on h2. What's this? He's already got 2 knights and he can't make use of it, huh? See how important the bishop on e8 is as a defender. So just in case there's a way to deflect the knight here, or he's trying to do it, but... Oh, hang on. No, there's still... e7 check opens the diagonal, but I still don't see anything for JannLee. Alright, now there's a big hole on e6. Oh, hang on, you can check here. Knight check, knight check. Black needs a knight. He needs a few knights for g2 and g3 and f2. No, I still don't see it. Attack, knight h7, knight h7. No. Knight e6. Alright, you could have done that a long time ago. And queen d6, maybe possible before. Oh, the excitement. Oh, I wasn't looking at the time, not that exciting. So 8 seconds to 1. And a win for JannLee. So break the streak. And we have 40 to 30 with exactly 40. Hang on, 40 games to go. I think I was saying 32, but still a long way to go. 70 games done, 40 to go. We have a 10-game difference. So that means that Jasugi will need to win 25 out of the next 40 to even up the match. Alright, so assuming bishop is just going to come back to f2, or... Okay. King h1 or pawn at f2. Oh, what? Oh, because of the threat of knight takes h4. Ooh. That's why he's only giving up a pawn instead of a piece. I was just looking at some way to deflect the queen. Did he have to go this way? Knight e4? It's protected on c5. You just want to get that queen out of the way and take the knight for free. That's a good way with the threat on f6. There could be some sort of a pawn at h6, that's it. Knight f6 the threat. So queen sack for 2 bishops. Still no obvious mates for either player. Maybe bishop a. It's just all in for the attack. Have to go back to g7. Pawn at h6, bishop f6. No, because king h7 was a defense. Oh, that's so tricky. King h1. Does it hold on? Who's attacking? Who's defending? It's going to be decided on time. You're not going to mate Jasugi in 2 seconds. Wow. Alright, so again, possibly the beginning of a comeback, but we haven't just seen Jasugi pull off a streak more than 3 games in a very long time. I mean, of course, a few 3-game streaks he could do with right now. But another one of these funny knight tours over to f4 and potentially g2. There's also the idea of pawn at d3, which we could see any time. The idea is sack on it. The knight isn't well placed for a sack on f2. Just block on e3. So I actually favour white's defensive chances in this game because the knight on f4 is misplaced when the king is drawn out to f2. So there's no attack on g2, there's no attack on h3. You have to ask yourself, what is the knight doing on f4? There's someone saying in the chat, the passive one always loses. No, I disagree completely. Because so many times in this game, we've seen JannLee win with defense. And you think, oh, he's not doing anything, he's just defending. He's so passive, but then there was a great example where he built a wall of pawns and he just crept forwards and pushed Jasugi off the board. Something's going to land on e3, surely. No? The knight doesn't have any good discoveries. Bishop e3. Yeah, rook at d7 is kind of desperate, but what else? Yeah, knight at h6 check coming too strong. King h8 is possible as a defense. So the bishop you have to get rid of. Yeah, just defend, I suppose. So the rook covers f7, that's the point, that's why there's no smothered mates. And something, just bishop at f4, you got this square covered now. Take everything. Oh, hang on, the time, 3 seconds versus 4. Still can't tell. I mean, I'd rather be the one with the checks because then you can play a sneaky move and defend everything and then check again. I didn't see the finish. Was it a mate? I assume it was a mate for JannLee. Smother mate or something, or some take on g7. I think I might have lagged a second at the end. I didn't see. Alright. Okay, this is a creative opening. What do you call this? A scotch or a Rye Lopez or some sort of funny mixture of the two? Bishop takes, rook takes. Oh, big hole on f2. Knight e4 coming. I think it's hard to say for sure, but I'd rather be black in this position because white has 0 counter-attack immediately. Interesting move, bishop at g4, not obvious why he went for bishop g4 and wanted a pawn. So cutting the king off on the second rank. Probably pawn at b4, find some discovery with a knight. Nothing obvious though. Just knight back to e6, no? Oh, he's got the check here on e4, in case queen takes knight. So both knights are covered, you don't even need the bishop on f8 to cover the knights. Oh, okay, so what's happening here? Pawn at d6 now, that's a very passive move when you're meant to be the one attacking. Hard to say who's winning. I think white has the edge now because there's too many pieces out of play. I'm just talking about the pieces that are close to the opponent's king. And I think just Jasugi's plan is just try and take all the material, and then eventually there'll be enough pieces to take over the back rank. But first, keep the king safe, win on material, that's the idea. Alright, and now create some threats on the king with pawn at h6 because time is now affected the last 5 seconds. So cheap threats, cheap threats galore. We're going to see checks, flags, sneaky long distance checks. Oh, threats of mate in one, and then follow it up. Oh, John got the check in the end. 2.4 seconds. That's pretty impressive. When both sides are the ones checking, I mean, I suppose if you get a couple of checks in a row and you can block out your opponent's checks, it's all about anticipating your opponent's moves as well in the time scrambles. So I don't think Jan is necessarily faster with the mouse, but he's very good at anticipating when the checks are coming and the right time to throw in spite checks and long distance checks and just seems to play random moves in the time scrambles. So random moves are good in time scrambles when you've got 3 seconds. Alright, what's happening here? This funny pawn at a6 move. I really don't know whether it's a good move or not, pawn at a6. I remain undecided on that one. Okay, so this, without a bishop for f1, you don't want to take for the king, allow the knight back, so you just leave it there and then plug the hole with the pawn eventually. And we just knight back to h4. Oh, not decided on that one either. Can you allow bishop takes h7 check and knight takes g5? Not sure about that. I mean, the bishop did cover e7 in case of any smothered mates. King h8, you would assume. And how do you deflect the queen away from f3? Not so easy. I mean, it's an obvious way in. Just trade everything, knight at h4, and queen back d5. Okay, nice. Right, so convincing win with black from Jasugi, and we haven't seen many of those because if you look back through the history, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0. So I think it was only 3 out of the last 10 games, which actually isn't too bad with the black pieces in Crazyhouse. Alright, so yeah, Lick's asking in the chat 10 in a row, no break. 110 rather in a row. Ugh. So if it really does go for 3.5 hours, it's a lot of talking for me. I usually, if I have a class, I talk for half an hour and then I have a bit of a break and talk a bit more and then I spend an hour traveling and I'm on the iPhone and unless I have to take calls. But 3 hours of talking is a lot, especially in 1-0 when the action is fast and furious. So at first sight, it's just a win for black on material. It doesn't matter about the speed at which you approach the task. I didn't actually see white had a queen in hand. What happened? It still looks like a win for black on material, even if I miscounted the pieces at first. As long as you keep this H file closed, the queen's not doing much on H2. So, do you keep the pawn away from F6? It's a tough decision. Yeah, because once you get the bishop, it's harder to start building a ladder of pawns. Once you get the bishop to G7. Okay, what is happening? Oh, he's gone for the win. He had a draw, but he's gone for the win. I wonder whether that'll be a good decision. Good for the audience, anyway. I'm going to see a time through. I think Jasugi's got this on time. There's no smother mates for F2. And probably on position as well in the end, but JannLee was getting desperate sacking pieces in the end for trying to force a mate because he had to. Alright, so 42-33, the difference is still 9 with 35 games to go. Okay, so we haven't seen a lot of these with an early pawn in H3 because obviously when you play E6 you don't see the diagonal here open very often. Alright, so sacking the rook back on G3. Getting rid of the knight, so this is the only piece in the opponent's half of the board at the moment. Just Jasugi's gone all in because obviously it takes white a couple of turns to promote and then do something. So the main threat is it bishop F2 or knight at H3 doesn't actually come with all checks. So probably bishop F2 first and then take a rook and then a knight for G3. Knight G3, rook at H2. Yep, take the check, queen back at G3 and pawn at G2 to finish. So yeah, we see a nice little triangle with rook, knight, bishop, and not necessarily having all the pieces protecting each other, but of course the point was to deflect the king into a check. Right, so back to a familiar opening. This bishop sitting on H4, ready to be traded. But perhaps not right now because there'll be a lot of pressure on G6 after the trade. So hence the move bishop at E8. This time Jasugi's the first one to control the B file. We mainly see JannLee play the move rook B8 in similar sorts of positions early. Alright, trying to make use of the rook. Maybe just grab a pawn on A7. Why not? Pawns are always going to be useful to break down this wall. It's a slow process, but you got to start somewhere. He wants a pawn for e5, knock away the queen, keep it far away from the white king. Black's main idea is to put a knight on g3, but then obviously you have to find a knight to take first before you put it on g3. Here we go, maybe this one. But defending first. Probably leave the rook there, or yeah, sack the rook. For a pawn and knight is good. And you see Jasugi there realizing the key square is g3 to defend once black has a knight in hand. So, ooh, that's a powerful move. Rook takes. I'm going to watch the counter attack, so you can't afford to take here. So rook on for defense. Maybe pawn on, yeah, pawn on just to block this one out. Very good move, knight at e4. Take on g3 to threaten mate here. And again a threat on h1. He has to block or move the queen. And there's going to be some pawn at g3, which will be decisive sooner or later. And I'm just waiting for this knight to move away. Yeah. Oh, no. Yes. Got to check. Watch the mate on h7. Knight at g3. Oh, he's done it. Now I had a feeling that wasn't a forced mate if Jasugi took on e2, but he did enough to win, just enough. All right, another very close game, and great attacking ideas from both players, and JannLee choosing the right moments to put pieces back on instead of trading too many pieces, and then the momentum would swing. So back to another one of these early pawn at d3s. I feel Jasugi is successful if he can keep a lot of pieces bottled in like this. And he doesn't necessarily need to take a pawn back. But he's just trying to keep the rook shut out, the pawn and bishop kind of out of play, far away from the black king. But yeah, this is a very dangerous move. I mean, 2 pawns is all it takes to crack through. What do we have here? Yeah, you can see Jasugi taking his time because not obvious how to defend when there's threats like this, losing material as well. So he's relying on a counterattack with e takes d1, but it still takes a couple of moves. And there's threats of rook at g8. Is it actually a threat? Or is it better to go this way? Pawn at e7. I don't see it. Because you need to deflect the queen to drop a rook on d7, for example. Alright, so he's trying to starve Jasugi of pieces. Oh, this way. Yes. And that's it. Oh, hang on, I didn't see the knight in hand. King f4. Oh, that allows queen takes, f2 check. Pawn on. Oh. He's got this avenue, g4, h5. I don't think this can be stopped. Yeah, so run out of checks. Okay, that was another extremely wild game. F3 bishop. Yeah, but key defensive move, king f1. Realizing that wasn't just enough pieces, just wasn't enough. Okay, so this time rook c1. We might see a potential exchange, check on c6 at some point. I do like this idea of opening up the h-file for Jasugi and not castling. He's done this a couple of times, and he has been successful. Maybe even sack the knight and pawn at h6, because I think it is actually quite useful to get rid of that bishop. And the reason is that bishops are better defenders than knights. So if black has a knight to replace, it's not as useful as the bishop. Although in saying that, there could be a pawn at g7, which is equally as useful in defense. I wonder if we're going to see castles after all, just to keep the king a bit safer. So black needs a couple more trades, then he can start building some serious threats on e2. So like a pawn for e2. Oh, wasn't expecting this. Any threats here? Hard to predict the moves. Maybe even just bishop back and king h8. But then the h file could be a factor. Okay, defend first. Defend. Yeah, the king will be safe for the moment on h, so defend. Also defending the diagonal. Alright, so Jasugi's doing a JannLee, just getting rid of all the, the attacking pieces. He's mopping up like JannLee. Stealing some defensive techniques. And yeah, he can choose a way if he needs to run away with the king, but this is a win to Jasugi. Rook h4, bishop f5. So, 44-35, but still, hasn't come any closer to reducing the gap with 31 games to play. So the match has been going for about 2.5 hours. And what's a third of 110? It's about 36, 37. And we have, yeah, 31 games to go. So, doing a quick bit of maths, there's probably about 1 hour to go. 1 hour of the match to go. So it'll be a 3.5 hour match in total. And the players are showing no sign of slowing down or taking breaks, so I would assume they're just going to go all out to the end. Alright, so big threat, take d5, but there's a response. Rook takes e5 check. I'm just hesitating because, yeah, knight takes e5 is going to be too strong because there's too many queens hitting f7. Okay. Grab a beer for the voices, blind man. Win by defending. Yeah, I don't know, is my voice running out? Oh, it's quite late, so I've got to be careful with the noise. Right, so g2, big weakness. Rook at g1, the typical plan. Take the queen. No decisive edge, just to replace a pawn, but obviously now the bishop, if you replace the pawn, can't be used in attack. Otherwise, it's good to just trade pieces and then you keep more for the attack. So perhaps king. Oh, he's counted the pawns. Yeah, so he needed to count the pawns because one more mates for Jasugi on g7 on d7. So he's defending against the threat of bishop at d7 after the rook trade here, rook at e8, and also attacking at the same time. Yeah, maybe I should take a pause, but no, if the players don't take a pause, I'm not going to take a pause either. I think that's the way it should be. We have commentator rules, don't you know? Yeah, see the TV, you turn on TV for a football or basketball match, they're allowed to take commercial breaks, but no, I'm going to keep going all the way to the end. Okay, just king back, king safe on h1 for the moment, until he gets a few more pawns. It's actually quite hard for Jan to attack, with the bishop covering g2. So yeah, that's why he's taking more material. Even if knight f4, the king will still be safe. Just take that, and king h1. Uh-oh, queen in hand, pawn at g2. Take. Queen adds. Knight add bishop at. Oh yeah, bishop and knight. It's made in two. So, okay, I was wrong. It turns out the rook at takes a8 wasn't possible after all. Or, I mean, there could have been some other defense to knight out of the way to f4 check. It was very nice spotting there from JannLee, noticing he had a chance to attack. Okay, pawn at d3. We've seen this probably at least 15 or 20 times. Game differential is now 11. It's going to be very hard to close the gap. I think the odds are now 10-1, Jasugi. Queen d4, okay. He really wants to pressure g2. Queen f5, opening up the bishop, defending here. That's a nice move, attacking in multiple directions, f2 and d1 also. There's the option to drop a pawn, but he doesn't need to. So getting rid of the bishop helps to attack on g2 if he has anything. And then bishop here blocks out the defense on g5. Do you take? I take with the bishop. And there's now a big hole on g3, so defending. And he wants to trade knight so he can threaten on g3. Oh, but knight covers g3. It's a good defense. Very nice find. Not just to win the queen, but obviously, but to defend g3, that was the whole point. Okay, so all this time Jasugi has been trying to set up knight at e3, but every single move, John has at least a bishop defending the square e3. And you'd think white has the advantage, but he'll have to attack by g7 because this isn't quite working. So take there, no. He's saying rook at g1 does nothing, he might be right. And yeah, I win to John. Whew. So, 28 games to go. Now it's about me surviving. Upper wager. Actually, I expect a short match. What does that mean? Maybe they're talking about something else, unrelated. But John had the idea to play 110 games. So $1 a game. Well, it could have been $2 a game for a 55 game match. But, and toss a coin to see who gets whacked first, or just take the computer random colors. Alright, so blocking on g6 you would assume, set up this fortress again. Ho hum, what do? You attack the slow way. I'm going to see some triple pawns perhaps. E takes f4. And attacking with tempo. Ooh, okay, so grabbing 2 pawns for the piece. And where's Jasugi's way in? Alright, now how does he use those knights? He's got to find a creative way to use these knights. Because there are no obvious squares for them, so that's why he's just keeping them for the moment there. And of course rook takes h5 can be answered by knight takes f3 check. You'd only do it if it was a forced mate. And grabbing another pawn. So I feel like Jasugi, although we all know his brilliant attacking skills, I feel like he has more success when he just takes a very slow and patient approach to attacking, especially against these fianchetto setups. Alright, this looks very dangerous. 2 rooks. So he's probably going to run out to h3 and block. No? Oh, he's doing it on... Oh, hang on, but there's mate on... There's a mate on f5. He had to go to h3 first. And even then, I mean, there could have been some pawn at g4 and rook h1 or something. Alright, let's go back to a6. A delayed d5. Oh, it was 2 knight c3. And I've seen upper, and I think I've even a couple of times played d5, allowing knight takes d5, and then you just get the pieces out quickly, e5, bishop c5. Right. It's a low trading game. Not many trades here in the opening. A closed center, which means it's not so easy to start building a snake of pawns on the dark squares like f6 and g7 and g5. Yeah, Blunderman's saying don't expect to come back from Jasugi. I think it's not happening. Alright, so switching to g2, leaving the bishop hanging. Must let the queen go all in for the attack. And now if he goes to f2, let's take a check. But he's chosen to go to f2. Because if he put the queen on... Ooh... Yeah, that's it, he's got it. So it's made in 2 with queen takes. Am I going to last the distance? Another 22 games to go. No, I've lost count. 20 something. 26 games to go. And Jasugi has to win 19 games to 7, just to equalize. Alright, so here we see a high trading opening. And that's very solid for white, grabbing an extra pawn just because he can, and doesn't seem to be anything wrong with it. Here it seems like John's trying to pressure c3 with and keep the knight. I was going to say keep the knight for h4, but I just noticed the bishop still was covering the one on g3, so it seems like Jasugi has everything protected. Knight at h4 in some moments could even be answered by a pawn to f3, using the queen to cover g2. And if you don't expect high trade, sometimes you can answer knight on h4 by castling. And GSVC is back, he's in the game chat. They wanted to test this stamina, yeah, but it's particularly a test for Jasugi because it must be almost 7 in the morning. He started at 4 AM. Oh, so it's almost like one of those upper ways in marathons. But just non-stop relentless games. 3.5 hours in a row. So with the bishop on h2, just like in chess, you have to move it out of the way first, of course. And because of the threat to drop a queen on h2, once a black king is safe, it's going to be impossible to defend. Black rook takes c8. Right, can he do it in 4 seconds? If anyone can do it, it's Jasugi. Bishop and rook. He's going to have to weave some magic. No, because there's queen at h2. He hasn't dealt with the threat of queen at h2. And he just ran out of pieces, so amazing king chase, but yeah, just came up short. Do some neck stretches to save myself staring at the screen too long. Maybe I should look at the screen from a different angle. We're seeing another one of these funny pawn at d3s. Okay, save a pawn for g4. I haven't seen that move in that particular order before. But there was a game where John got in the move pawn at f6, and I thought, oh, this is close to over. Oh, there's a chess theme deflection here. Check. So defending the diagonal. Don't you call that the Siberian trap? There's some Sicilian where you do this formation with knight g4, knight d4, queen c7. Any threats? Any threats? So there's a potential knight e2, but then the white knight's covering. So what's Jasugi playing at here? Bishop takes. Because the knight covers all the checks here. There's no counterattack. And knight at h3 is... Oh, hang on, there's the king escaping out to e2. That's a reason he's gone this way, perhaps? Oh, maybe it didn't matter. Yeah, because if he had the rook and take the queen, it's just way too much material. Okay, still a 12-game differential. And we see a queen d3. What do you call this? A Skefter opening? Skefter Millis? The old queen d3. Not such a bad opening. And especially if the bishop comes out early, you've got to really be careful of moves like queen b5 check, unless you play c6 as well. So, okay, this is something completely different, and just Jasugi's decided to throw into the mix. Queen's safe for the moment on b3. So now Jasugi can attack. Probably just pick up the knight. And he really needs more diagonal pieces. Even just throw g4 up the board. Needs more diagonal pieces for h6. Yep, so good defense from John. Probably just sack the knight as well, get it out of the way. Ah, good move also, h4. It's opening the h file, making use of the rook, which, again, otherwise, he's just going to sit there. Probably play no part in the rest of the game otherwise. So, you can see these pieces here I'm pointing at. The fishing pole is where... Oh yeah, you're talking about the move h4, we get the old Rai Lopez trap theme. So king h1, I'm pointing at both corners of the board. So of course you can win the queen, but then you got to think, has white got a decisive attack with rook takes h6 check? Pawn, yeah, just rook take, yeah, white should have enough here. Bishop at, pawn at, just keep dropping everywhere. Oh, nice angle here from the side. Yep, that's it. Yeah, you're talking about the Siberian trap. The Siberian trap in particular is one where you deflect, deflect the knight on f3, I thought. And you're preparing a queen takes h2 mate from a long distance. And sometimes your queen even goes back to b8 in the Sicilian way your opponent goes knight b5, queen b8. Okay, so I missed the opening, but nothing too dramatic. We see a familiar gambit. And so no taking on f3, just preserving the pieces because, yeah, it gives black more access to e4 if you hesitate and hold off on the trade on f3. So I like black here. I haven't said that too many times after Jasugi's opening, but he's got some weaknesses to target. GSVC is saying something about bishop c7. The lead chess went down for me, so I missed the opening. Alright, so sack the bishop, put the pawns back on, trade all the pieces. Knight e3 is strong. Take the rook, take the knight, take a rook it. I'll put the knight on first, I suppose. 2 rooks in hand. Pawn is very useful for g3. And that's why JannLee's getting desperate, resorting to counter-attack, but yeah, you can just take the knight. If he goes knight check on h6, that should be game over very soon. Grab the pawn for h3, and then pawn at f2 or pawn at h2. That's what I would do. But perhaps there was some bishop takes g7. So this move is a countermeasure against knight at h6 check. And he's got knight at f2 and g takes with check. Queen at e3 promote, or pawn at e2. Yep, that's it. A nice game from Jasugi with black. So using the bishop sack to poke holes in g3 and f2 and h2. I haven't seen this move order before. So early trade, bring the bishop back. f5 is always a nice square for the knight, especially because it can't be hit by a bishop d3. Just pawn e6. Bit of a weakness on e6 after black plays bishop b7. And there's also queen h5 check coming potentially. Queen h5 now. If bishop drops, take and bishop at f7, otherwise... Could even grab the rook, knight at g8 check, bishop takes. Oh, there's got to be something. Yeah, so knight at g6 coming. There's no pawn for d2. Just knight at... Oh, hang on, what? He's allowing black a lot of pieces. Did he not have knight at g6 check before? Maybe you couldn't see any forcing sequence of checks. King e2, what to do with the knight? Oh, good move. Might even be a winner. Yeah, black has some serious play now. But there's this path g3 h2. How do you stop it? take, and you need something. Well, actually, you need quite a lot. No, I don't see it. It's a win to Jasugi. Nice game. So good judgment, but I thought the move Bishop A6 was very close to turning the whole game around. Okay, so we have 49-40 with 21 games to go. 9-point lead. Okay, I mean, I have seen in these long matches where Jasugi just finds another gear, and I don't know what it is. He doesn't seem to be having time to grab a drink or anything. He hasn't taken any breaks, but I don't know what is perking up his energy levels. But he has this ability to find another gear when it's needed. Or maybe I'm just making it over dramatic for the final 20 games. Yeah, pawn at c2 I was expecting, because if you deflect one of the heavy pieces, this move is not so dangerous. And then black takes over the d-file completely. So yeah, this move is actually very hard to meet. Have to sack the queen. Or we just take that, and then knight takes f3, knight at g2. Yeah, just bishop on him. You're threatening mate in 2, check, and knight e3 mate. So, 20 games to go. What do you think, Blunderman? Still here? Still with us? Are you lasting the distance? Oh. I think as soon as I stand up from my chair, I'm going to collapse. That's why I'm doing some stretches now. Alright, we see a funny blocker on the h-file with the knight on h4. And this pawn on g4 just ripe for the plucking. Why hasn't he taken it yet? And there could be some very tricky pawn at e7 and knight at f6 check. Potentially. Maybe it didn't quite work. Oh, it's so close to mate. Ooh. Some combination of bishop at f5 and pawn at h7 and knights all over the place. g7, g6, f7. So dropping 3 bishops in defense. It's funny, John's, for the whole time he's been allowing something to land on h7. And of course he's just going to answer king h8 and say, well, you can't get through on the light squares. I mean, okay, you can put a pawn there, but so I meant the dark squares. But you can take over the light squares, but you still need lots of deflecting pieces to take over the back rank. Okay, what's this? Is it a mate? Oh no, no. Black's got this. And just check again. Rook at g2. Rook at takes. Okay, do it this way. Queen takes g2. Was it necessary? Maybe he really didn't have anything, and Black's counter attack was too strong. Right, where are we up to? So 9 games, and Jasugi needs to win by 19 games to go. 14 games to 5. It's not impossible, but I think the odds are pulled out to 30-1. Maybe once in every 30 occasions at 7 AM, Jasugi would win 14-5 against JannLee. But I don't think it's going to happen, but it'll be interesting to see the match. So the last games within, say, 3 or 4. Stick with the action. Pawn at b3. That's an interesting move. Does he want to sack here and put a pawn there or a knight there? I don't quite get what's happening. Pawn at b3. Juice Bowl is saying in 30 minutes. There's a Buckhouse Swiss test. Ah, well, I'm just gonna stick with this for now. Thanks for telling me. This might be finished in 30 minutes. What do we got? 19 games to go. And there haven't been too many. There's been a few, like 20-second games, but not too many. Okay, so we see this similar pawn formation where I think at some moment JannLee let two knight checks happen, but he's gonna be careful this time, you would assume, not to allow a knight of h4. f6. Ooh, looks so scary to play a move like f6 when there's three knights and a queen against you. Alright, guard g7, gotta do it. Oh, bishop takes, bishop takes. Yeah. Had to block, but too many pieces. Okay, we have 20 games to go. No, sorry, 18 games to go. But I think I mean, with every win for JannLee, the odds are pulling out to like 50 to 1. Next game it's going to be 100 to 1. That's going to be an exponential increase. Alright, so what's the strategy here? Trading a lot on the dark squares, building up, trying to provoke a passive move like bishop at f8, but Jan's having none of that. You do have the option to take here and then knight at g6. But yeah, I mean it's a fine line in these d4, d5 openings whether you go for a rush and try and take over your opponent's position by trading lots of pieces, and even if it involves a sack. It's a fine line between that and allowing your opponent to replace their defensive pieces back on, because as soon as they set up a fortress, you have to start again from square one. But yeah, JannLee is not the easiest person to just break through using brute force. I was thinking knight at c8, but maybe rook is better. This is good, so pawn on e6 will be very useful. Knight at d8, I was thinking, and bishop at f7. But this allows the bishop to come back and defend. Okay, this is also a good move, pawn on h5. So it's starting a base with a pawn that's defended twice is a really useful move. But it's just incredible defense from Jan again. Oh, to see, I still don't quite see mate. It's so close. Queen at f8's going to win on time anyway, and promote. Could have promoted. Oh, is there a bishop? There's a bishop covering it. Alright. There's one back. Still, a lot of work to do. It's a tough ask. The players must be very tired by now. I mean, they're both playing at inconvenient times just to get the match to happen before Christmas. It was the only day they could find. And yeah, I mean, the thing is, if you drag it out over 2 weekends, there's more chance of someone delaying or postponing the match, saying, oh no, I can't do that date anymore, and then you run out of days to complete the match in time before the end of the year. So again, we see this bishop at takes c6 coming back in defense, has to be traded. And Jasugi's positional approach of pawn at d3, crippling the pawns, reducing the activity of the pieces. I'm not sure how useful it is though to have the two bishops on the same color squares. When, I mean, you have to be the one putting pressure on your opponent when you've sacked a fair bit of material. He wants to hold off on this train because the pawn's kind of annoying on e5. Alright, queen takes knight. Oh, so many sacks. But John's going to defend. He's going to leave the queen there and defend. Maybe put a knight on or bishop at g3 or something. No? Alright, that surprised me. So pawn at f5, take that, put the bishop back on e6. No, he's leaving the knight there. Oh, so we're going to see a move like bishop at g3, but then bishop at h2 is a strong response. Oh, can't tell what's happening. There's still no counterattack. He needs a rook. So that's why the queens come back. Knight f1 and queen h2. Oh, what? That's not check. I was expecting a sequence with checks. Yeah, Jasugi's got this for sure. Like 100%. You never lose this from here. JannLee never checks. Okay. Another nice game from Black from Jasugi. So he's actually won 7 out of the last 9 games. That's a good sign for those who want the final part of the series to be exciting. We still have 16 games to play. And didn't quite take a look at the opening, but it looks like a high trading one. Was it d4, d5 again? And knight at h4 defending, getting time on the bishop. You don't have to take this straight away. I mean, it might be useful to guard the pawn if you want to guard g6. I think he's intending a queen sack, no? Ah, knight at e6 check, even better. So it still needs a knight for e6 to mate or trade some more pieces off. Nothing forcing that I can see. So yeah, just keep chipping away. And now time for a counter attack. Very good time for a counter attack. Oh, that's so painful. I mean, what do you do? What do you do with white pieces here? There's no move. Yeah, problem when you have all your bishops on dark squares and your opponent plays pawn at f3, and then you need a move like bishop at h3 to defend, but you don't have a bishop. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I couldn't see an improvement over pawn at e5 on Jasugi. Sort of run out of ideas to conjure up an attack on the king. But again, great timing from John in the fight back, the counter attack. All right, knight c6. So allowing knight at c7, is he going to answer queen takes, you would assume? Alright, was there any reason to sack that pawn? Yeah, I do things like that sometimes, and then I realize that it's not the best strategy to sack first and think later. So again, John's defending very well. He's putting pieces on with tempo, choosing the time to counterattack. Not sure what to do next though. Bishop at h2. We just put the knight on and defend. Sneaky threat. Queen takes e2 check. Yeah, I mean, I think John's motto is Win by defense. Win by defense first. And my motto is sack first and think later. Alright. Hard to tell. Who's winning on material? Let's count the pieces. Actually, it looks about even on material, funnily enough. Black's up a rook. 4 bishops versus 4 knights, so it was. It keeps changing every move. So threat knight at d2 is covered by the queen. I think black's king is quite safe, actually, here. Could even come back to d8 if he wants. But yeah, take all. Yeah, that's it. Very nice from Jasugi. Look at the pawn chain. I'm not a chain, but what do you call it? An L shape of pawns. An angle. A right angle of pawns. Alright, what have we got to go? 14 games? And another creative opening. I was expecting some bishop c5 from John, attacking f2 now that the rook has left. Just looks like a bit of a target, this pawn on f2. It's so tempting to take that pawn on g3, sack the rook. Oh, come on, do it. You know you want to. Oh, he's gone that way. So, why is he defending? Was there a threat? Does anyone understand knight at e7? Did he have to block the e file? Or was it just a slip, knight f7? I didn't understand the knight at e7. Yeah, I'm not going to assume it was a mouse slip. I don't know whether the idea was to block the e file because the forcing line he looked at wasn't working. Yeah, I have no answers. I'll have to ask the players about that one. Okay, who's this good for? Probably see a check. No reason why not. Make him use up one of the pawns. So knight at f4 is an option, bishop at f1. He wants to set up some sneaky pawn at e2, but yeah, now white is replaced with a pawn. Still, always in this position, black has good long-term attacking potential, even if you don't see any immediate threats on the board, just because of the huge space advantage that he has. I mean, pretty much for the rest of the game, trades are going to be good for black. So he can sack, he could take on at b2 anytime he wants. Threat to drop on d2. Oh, there was also, yeah, the queen takes h4 check. The threat's coming from all angles. Just bring the knight back to... Oh, you had to deal with the knight at h6 check threat first. Is this too much? Knight at e7 check. Ooh, so close to a mate, but not there. Maybe he needs another knight for knight at g6 check. Oh, what was that? Was there some sack on h7 that I missed? I just saw the king there. I assume there was some queen takes h7 check. Okay, so back to this accelerated fianchetto with g5. It does help to close the h file, and also pawn could be useful if you just try and keep it there, and there'll be some piece landing on f3 in the future. Alright, so you see John is at the moment leaving the bishop hanging, so he's got to decide if, I don't know, king f1, does he want to take the pawn, does he want to save the bishop? King's gone for a bit of a wander over to c1. Looks quite reasonable. Okay, saving the bishop back to h7. Just watch that bishop bearing down on c2. Alright. So assuming just take a couple of times. Take with the bishop first, a bit surprising. Oh, so this is a defensive sack. So he gets to replace a piece first before Jasugi attacks. No, okay, this is surprising. I really thought Jan would spend a move defending again with bishop at h7, for example. Knight at e1. Now, what about f7? Isn't f7 a target? Couldn't you just leave the knight on e1 and do something on f7? Yeah, it's hard to calculate the mate if you wanted to sack two queens with queen takes. I don't know. Maybe nothing there, but Jasugi's done well to sack the queen back and really slow down Jan's attack. Okay, we have 11 games to go, and Jasugi has to win 9 games to 2 to equalize the match. So the odds haven't pulled out to infinity, but it's something like, I don't know, 75 to 1. 9 to 2, Jasugi must win to equalize. And you would assume, even if there's no prize money, that the players would do a tie break a couple of games, if that ever happened. So queen at e1, king takes c2, what's the follow-up? Hard to say. So defending the bishop first, threatening mate in1. Can't take with the bishop, queen at d1. So there's also knight e4. Ooh. How do you cover both squares at once? Is it possible? Well, knight e7 check covers e4, and then you can play knight f3. So knight e7 check is the move. No, he's not listening to me either. I'm telling you, John, knight e7 check was the move. d4. Bishop g5 check. Check. Okay, I've started to go completely bonkers. I don't think bishop g5 was check. Still thinking about the previous game. Alright, we've seen this so many times today. It's about as popular as Jasugi's d5 and e6, c6 opening. It's the sort of position John would think about sacking the queen on h5 and maybe knight at f4 to follow up. Okay, so John's going in for the sack first. You don't see Jasugi ahead on material too much and out of the opening. So just tucking the king back, defending everything. Yeah, he wanted to play knight at f4, but the bishop does cover on that key square, the key defensive formation with the knight covering the light squares. Alright, so count the pieces JannLee sack, that's 2. And Jasugi in a second is going to be holding all the minor pieces. And Jan all the pawns. And it's really hard to tell who's winning. I do feel like Jasugi should be winning if he just moves the king back. And Jan, I think, has sacked maybe 1 or 2 too many minor pieces. You can see him pulling back in defense, but he doesn't have any pieces to drop. Yeah, just start to clean up some pawns. Even take on b7 if you want. Just drop something back on f2. And watch out for a potential knight at h3, of course. Just take it once, put a bishop back. Yeah, pawn at f2 will keep the king safe forever. Oh, but this queen takes f5. Yeah. Okay, not forever, for a short time. Rook at... Alright, this time he's got it for sure. It's made in a couple with... Oh, okay. Okay, finally rook at h7. I think he missed a few fast summons. As long as you do it all with check, you don't leave your opponent any counter resources. We have 9 games to go. And you notice Jasugi has just won 3 in a row, so we might be in for the enthralling finish. 9 games to go, and Jasugi has to go 7 games to 2 to tie the match up at 55 all. Still looks like a free piece, says GSVC. So what ended up happening? He left the knight hanging somewhere, and he just took a pawn back for a knight. And he never got to recapture the bishop because of the pawn at a6. Yeah, I don't know whether it's a free piece now. Ooh, this is going to be dangerous. So threatening queen takes. Is it worth it? 2 pieces? Yeah, knight at e2. And bishop at and you're obviously saying John's won 12 out of the last 16. 12 out of the last... Oh, Jasugi, sorry. I thought you said John. I lost the ability to read, and very soon I will also lose the ability to speak. Yeah, 12 out of the last 16 is pretty huge. So anything can happen in the final 7 games. Okay, so first deal with the mate threat. It's a good move because it's still hard to defend. Queen at g2, defending g2, also threatening mate. Oh, so much attack piling up on g7. How to defend? Is it possible? Have we reached that zone whether it's no longer savable? Yeah, oh, what a great move. Queen at g2. Yeah, desperation, I think that's it. Okay, very nice. How many games to go now? 6 games, and Jasugi needs... No, 8 games. Jasugi needs 7 out of 8. Alright, who wants to take Jasugi at 100 to 1? Alright, e6. How do you defend e6? You don't, you hit the queen. I would have thought about sacking the queen, bishop takes. I'm not sure you want to be in a hurry to open up this F file though, if you're thinking about sacking. So, yeah, safer way is to keep the F file closed, take the pieces here. I think you can afford to take that and keep the king safe on h1. Bishop at g2 is good. Bishop at g4, I guess. And queen defending on h3. Oh, so threatening a sneaky mate with knight at e7. Check. Alright, so we're going to see lots of trades here for knights for bishops, I suppose. No easy blocker. And that's a good move, bishop at e6. So inducing a queen sack. Still a big threat to take on h2. Check. Maybe now it's time to deflect the knight away from f4. Well, he's done it this way, but ooh, scary. Knight takes g6 has to be covered. Knight h4 is expected. Knight at g3. So we're going to see a trade here in bishop at g6, I presume. Ah, okay, even better. Still, takes time to get through. Uh-oh. Could have gone knight takes, but yeah, that's... And Jan is overpowering Jasugi. No blockers left. There's a block with a queen. Just take everything on g2. Oh, what? Oh, come on, move. Do any legal move. Was a flag in one with the check. Wow, what a finish. You only get that finish in 1-0. Or fast. Still got a shot. 7 games to go. And Jasugi needs 6 out of 7 to tie. So again, this funny knight sack to poke a hole in the structure and keep the pieces crippled. Maybe there's some way to so the bishop can't play a role in the rest of the game. Maybe if you could find a way to stick a knight on d4 with tempo and keep the bishop locked out for longer. If the bishop comes back to c6, then I think it's really just a free piece for Jan. Alright, but this is huge. Where did this counterattack come from? I haven't been watching. Oh no, there's a pre-move. Bad pre-move. Rook at f2. What was he expecting? Alright, maybe it was planned all along. Made him one. Maybe it was a brilliant pre-move after all. Alright, take here, hit the bishop. Just bishop d3, that's it. Yeah, bring the knight first, then you want to take here, sack. Hold off on the sack, okay. Yeah, so nice move hitting in both directions. So no sack yet. What happens if take, I guess he wanted to bring the knight back and switch colors over to the dark squares on f6. GSVC says b6 a big mistake versus Jasugi, I can confirm. And he's saying some queen f3, Upperways and saying some queen f3 move early. I'm not sure exactly when, but it looks like it hits the rook and maybe there was some attack on f7. I'm not sure exactly when, but was it instead of knight 1 f3? Alright, so still a gaping hole on g6 has to be covered, so the e-file is blocked. Going in with the bishop first, clearing the square, and probably just sack. Oh, hang on, no. Don't be so far, don't be so hasty. Yeah, so Jasugi can only lose this on time, 15 seconds. So queen at b7 made in one thread. Knight at d5, queen at c7, that's it. Queen covers a6. Oh, Jan seems tired. Yeah, well, it's youth, maybe the deciding factor in the last 5 games. So Jasugi aged about 20 and Jan aged in his early to mid 30s. I've been going for almost 3.5 hours, and we're down to our last 5 games. So Jasugi within 3 games, still in the match. Oh, I need to crack my neck again. Right. So this time Jasugi the one with the queen on f8. We saw that a few times with the colours reversed. Or the queen reversed rather. Rook covering g7. I guess he just wants to take back with a knight. Probably bishop add. Yeah, really hard to get through here for Jan, but also the queen and bishop covering g4 is. It's no obvious ways in. So just using the pieces in hand to try to defend with tempo. Oh, wasn't expecting such a fast attack, considering the nature of the game so far. So pawn plus a rook would be good for Jasugi. So using a bishop. Oh, bishop g3. What does he need? He can grab the pawn on d4, but it comes with check. Queen takes check. A counter check, rather. So he has to grab a pawn a bit slower, and what is he aiming at? Why does he want 2 pawns? He just wants to deflect the knight away so he can go here. But he has used the rook for defense. Knight at g3. Bishop takes. Rook takes is forced. Pawn at f2. Oh, we check. That's it. Yeah, king. Rook covers the kings this game on f1. A very nice finish. Where are we up to? Jasugi, uh, coming back with a stunning finish. 4 games to go, he's within 2. So it is still anyone's match. See who has a final burst of energy at the end. So let's see what John does with this bishop. He's been switching it up, whether he puts it on a dark square or a light square like e6, h5. Hey, but the odds change from game to game. That was quite a few games ago. I said 100 to 1. Doesn't really want to drop something in f4 because of a trade here, and something's going to land on e3. Oh, actually, he's got the knights covering back on e3. Check. Yeah. Bishop f4. Still, I mean, how do you get in with these bishops here? He's trying. Bishop back at. I wonder if Jan would take a draw. I've hardly ever seen Jan take a draw in his life. Alright, exciting finish. It's pieces for pawns. Got to defend with this awkward move, bishop at g8. It's quite an important piece to get rid of, but you can't force it. He's just going to keep replacing the bishops. Jan refusing a draw by trading on d2. You could have dropped back on h6. Alright, so what was that on e? Was it a pawn on e5? I think once he gets rid of that pawn, it's very hard for white to attack. So the time, almost equal. Jasugi 4 seconds on that move. Dropping the queen, but the knight is in the way. And there's no more knights for g3. Oh, counterattack, but he needs more. He's not enough. So probably try to hunt down the queen if I was Jasugi. Knight at g5. Oof, no. Oh, what is this? No mates. King c2 is even possible. Knight at f7, I made him one threat. Oh no, John's faster at the end. Unbelievable. You would really think Jasugi would be the favourite in the time scrambles, but John's so speedy with only 3 seconds to go. He made a lot of moves in those 3 seconds. Okay, so John has reached 55 first, has at least a tie, and Jasugi has to win the remaining 3. Alright, he's going for a position which he doesn't have any easy attack, and also JannLee has lots of bishops and pawns. I mean, they're the best pieces to defend with. Bishops, pawns, queen on f1. So it's going to be a slow grind from Jasugi. It's really the only way through here. Jan going back to his motto that defense wins. Alright, king's very safe on h1 with the bishop and queen covering all the avenues of attack. Another bishop on e6. Okay, but here comes the counter-attack on the dark squares, winning some material back. Still got the bishop covering h3. Good move, rook at c8. Just keep putting a heavy, even queen at a8 if necessary. How to attack? Yeah, Jasugi's he's really stumped this game. How to attack? Okay, he's found a way, but here goes John. Brute force attack, knight at f7. Bishop at f5 and queen at h8. So John has officially taken the match 56-52 with 2 games in hand. But as far as the prize money goes, they are just playing $1 a game, $1 a point. Alright, so congratulations. It's been an absolutely top quality match to follow, to commentate on. Lots of people watching in the Lead Chess chat, 53 spectators. And quite a few here on Twitch as well. So, Crazy asking it, he only just officially won the match only a matter of about 30 seconds ago. When he got to 56. Haha, F. Gala saying easiest 56 JannLee ever owned. Knight at G1 perhaps as a defense? Even bishop in the corner at H1 was a possible. Actually, no, it's queen at H3. I'm going to try and reduce the trades if you're Jasugi. Because the queen by itself isn't going to do that much. Even rook is easily blockable on E2 or F2. And oh, here it comes. That's the moment. And maybe bishop at trade first, and then pawn first, and then bishop at E5. He's going to win on material. What does that do? He wants to take on G4 the queen, I suppose. Jasugi's going to set up some other mate theme with queen at G8 soon. Right, you've got to be careful though, he can't do it all with check. Looks like he's gone for it. Pulled the trigger. Come back in defense with the bishop. Save the pawn. Take here, rook it. Got knight at G5 coming, if he wants it, but there's no mate of king H8. Alright, 2 seconds versus 1, anything can happen. Throw in some checks. Alright, don't know what John was expecting. Maybe he wanted to play rook takes G8, and the rook on F8 got in the way. Okay, so last game, 57-52. Hang on, John won. I thought he got flagged. Alright, I've really lost track. Could have sworn JannLee got flagged. Are we watching the right game? Alright, so here's this pawn at F5 move again, which is always a bit awkward to defend against on this long diagonal. Yeah, so John's picking up a lot of material back for his piece sec. I checkmated it. I just missed the last move of the game. Ooh, pawn at F3. Just trading blows for blow. I wonder if there's a way to deflect the bishop with bishop at F4 check. And if knight takes, queen takes, and G5. It was an attempt to save the queen at least. But maybe Jasugi just wants to go all in the last game. Okay, a good defense with the two bishops. Wow, this is a really safe king. I wonder who's winning. If the king goes back, there's knight G2 check. You got to take black here, even though he doesn't have many heavy pieces left. Knight C, does that actually help to pick up the rook? He wants a bishop for G4. We can play bishop to G4, I suppose, but king's running back to H2. Wow, so the rook was for defense on F6. We had the knight covering as well. Bishop covering the white knight here on D5. So still hard to say what's going to happen. Yeah, queen F2, queen F2, queen F2, and queen G2. Because the bishop on E4 breaks the pin, so the queen can now move sideways or diagonally. Yeah, knight out of the way, and queen G4 and queen G6. Knight D5. Okay. Alright, so a top quality game, even right to the finish. That was game number 110. Here endeth the match. So spectacular, so many spectacular games that you couldn't tell who was going to deliver a mate or flag the opponent until the very last second. So JannLee takes the 110 game match 57-53. it lasted about 3 hours and 35 minutes. And that was without a pause, without a break, even a pit stop, a toilet break, without a drink, nothing. The commentators survived as well, so it's bedtime pretty soon for probably all of us, especially the ones that stayed up on the west side of the US and Canada. And for the Aussies, it's also pretty late the next day, Friday night. So thank you everyone that made this possible, to the players, JannLee, Jasugi, and the donators, the sponsors, Upwazen and Master 10 for putting up the prize money. So it was an old school rival match. The players have known each other from Bughouse on Fix for many years. And yeah, been Crazyhouse rivals for at least 3 or 4 years. Okay, well, thanks for watching everybody. I hope you enjoyed the match. We'll most certainly post this to YouTube after it's finished, after I stop, and I am playing a match against Vectorveld in about 15 hours. So I'll be streaming that too. You're welcome to watch. It's at 7 AM GMT on Saturday morning. So if you're up for that, I'll see you then. And the Elite is also 3+2, but I'll need a bit of sleep before that in about 24 hours plus a bit. Okay, thanks for watching.